Picture this. Someone roasts you so hard you end up in a different world. Misumi, our protagonist, is just your average loser. Out of nowhere, he gets zapped to a mistress who roasts him so fiercely he lands in Brazil. That day, Misumi woke up early as usual, practiced his archery, and everything seemed normal. But then, something bizarre occurred. Misumi found himself face to face with a master glowing in a magnificent halo. The master informed him he would be sent to a new realm known as Isekai. Misumi was astonished, while the master seemed even more surprised, assuming Misumi was already aware. Later, we discover this master is Tsukuyomi, the sovereign of the Night Realm. Tsukuyomi explains to Misumi that he has come to Japan to bestow him with incredible power to adapt to his new environment. Misumi was in awe, especially recalling that Tsukuyomi was among the mightiest masters. Tsukuyomi granted Misumi his powers, and in an instant, he was whisked away to the new world. However, upon arriving in Isekai, he was met with hostility from the mistress, who ridiculed him and warned him to steer clear of her world's inhabitants. Tsukuyomi had to reappear, sacrificing a significant amount of his spiritual energy to elevate Misumi to superhuman status, enabling him to survive in this new realm. After Tsukuyomi vanished, Misumi embarked on his journey, but fatigue set in quickly, especially after 3 days without food or water. Boredom crept in too. He saw no living beings, only heard footsteps and the wind's whispers. On the third evening, he heard a girl's desperate cry for help and rushed toward the sound. To his astonishment, he encountered a massive, two-headed, ferocious dog. Strangely, the dog spoke, asking Misumi for his name in a menacing tone. Misumi introduced himself with his new name in Isekai, Makoto. The dog lunged at him, igniting a fierce battle, but Misumi tapped into his super strength and defeated the beast. What shocked him most was that the girl he approached turned out to be a pig dressed like a human, speaking like one too. The pig expressed gratitude for his courage, and when Misumi inquired about her identity, she revealed her name was Emma and that she was once human. She explained that she transformed into this form to offer herself as a sacrifice due to her village's failing crops and recent drought. Misumi then asked her where the nearest village was, and she informed him it was quite far, urging him to continue. Despite his exhaustion, Misumi pressed on, harboring resentment toward the master who had sent him to this inhospitable land. After a grueling trek with Emma, Misumi finally reached the village, where he eagerly sat down to devour food. He noticed Emma could magically pull dishes to the table and asked her how she managed that. Emma explained it was due to the magical spells everyone in their village had mastered. Misumi requested her to teach him, and as she began, it became clear his skills lagged far behind hers. Grateful for her hospitality, Misumi went to bed, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. The next morning, Emma discovered Misumi had left and felt a deep sadness. She found a note from him stating he had taken the spell paper to learn everything. He vowed to return once he reached a high enough magical level to assist them in restoring their farming. Misumi began using the spells to confront the Shin Dragon, whom Emma revealed was the cause of the fog and drought. One day, he accidentally summoned the Shin Dragon by misusing a spell. Misumi attempted to harness the super strength granted by Tsukuyomi, but the dragon proved far more powerful. Once the dragon realized Misumi hailed from the human realm, it proposed an alliance, having accessed Misumi's memories. Eventually, Misumi and the Shin Dragon struck a deal, much to Misumi's delight. We witnessed the Shin Dragon bestowing a portion of its powers to Misumi for their collaboration. After fulfilling his end of the bargain, Misumi gained additional strength and found himself at the Rembrandt Trading Company to negotiate with the manager. Now masked, Misumi communicated solely through writing to conceal his true identity, still just a young boy. Patrick Rembrandt, the company's representative, was taken aback by Misumi's written communication but quickly adjusted. Patrick inquired about Misumi's well-being, and when asked about his arrival, he mentioned he had come the day before. We learned that Rembrandt caters to adventurers, but also engages in various business activities. The representative was surprised that despite Misumi's desire to join, he had no prior adventuring experience, complicating his entry. Apologizing, the representative explained that he couldn't accept an adventurer without a history into his professional team. However, Misumi astonished Patrick with some of the rarest gemstones, leaving him genuinely surprised, especially since he desperately needed them to combat a rare disease affecting his family. The conversation shifted dramatically, and Patrick profusely apologized to Misumi. Misumi inquired about the rare disease. and Patrick explained it was caused by a fraudulent doctor who intended to harm them. After numerous tests, they discovered sapphires were crucial for treatment. Once their discussion concluded, Misumi asked Patrick how to join the Merchants Guild, expressing his desire to start his own business. Patrick revealed the guild's location and mentioned an essential test for acceptance. Grateful, Misumi headed to the Merchants Guild, only to be stunned by the news of 2 exams, one theoretical and one practical. Inquiring about the exams, Misumi learned from the official that the theory test featured intricate trade questions, with a book of similar queries priced at 2 gold coins. The practical exam required gathering rare items, demanding a skilled adventurer, as the guild believed bravery was essential for a successful merchant. Despite the steep cost, he opted to purchase the book, and after studying it, he resolved to take the exam. The questions were tough, yet Misumi answered them flawlessly and in record time. Even the proctor was taken aback by Misumi's perfect score, a first for such a quick completion. Next, the official instructed Misumi to draw a ball from a box on the table, which he did. The official informed him he needed to retrieve 4 items, the most perilous being the Howling Fang, which posed significant dangers. Nevertheless, Misumi collected all the items swiftly and presented them to the officials, who informed him that his guild credentials were imminent. Ecstatic, Misumi realized he would have faced a 6-month wait had he failed either test. Soon after, he received a credential card granting him free access throughout the guild. Misumi visited one of the guild's cafes, surprised by the drinks offered, and after tasting them, he disliked the flavor, opting to find familiar food. He encountered fellow guild members and sensed the tension in the air. When he inquired about the cause, one member explained that Tomo and Miyu's relationship was strained. The root of their conflict was evident, intense jealousy, as both sought Misumi's attention, which he remained oblivious to. Later, as bedtime approached, Misumi entered his room, surprised to find Miyu and Tomo already there. With only 2 beds available, he faced the dilemma of sleeping next to one of them. Jealousy flared again, nearly igniting another conflict, but Misumi chose to sleep on the couch, leaving the beds for them. The guild was quiet, and Misumi was adjusting to the atmosphere, though uncertainty lingered. Patrick Rumbrand's foes were closely monitoring Misumi, astonished by his rapid success in the guild's exams, plotting Patrick's downfall. We discovered that the Shin Dragon, after fulfilling her pact with Misumi, had transformed from her dragon form into one of his guild colleagues. This led to Misumi discussing the terms of their agreement with her. Afterward, Shin offered to show Misumi how she created the fog that caused drought and poor harvests in Emma's village. Misumi was astonished by the bizarre world, especially when he recognized some familiar fruits from his human realm. The vastness of the place amazed him, prompting him to use his powers to gauge its dimensions, realizing it extended for great distances. Misumi decided to return to Emma's village with the Shin Dragon. Upon arrival, he found Emma terrified at the sight of Shin, repeatedly questioning why he brought her there. Misumi reassured her, explaining his agreement with Shin aimed to resolve their issues, and soon, peace was restored. The village chief was grateful for this resolution through Misumi, as was Emma, who expressed her thanks for saving her and the village. Unbeknownst to Misumi, the contract with Shin required the villagers to relocate to a new area under her control. This troubled Misumi, especially when Shin mentioned that the new location was in a desolate, elevated region. However, Shin reassured him that there would be no further conflicts and everything would be all right. Then, Misumi was taken aback by a miniature version of Shin. Horrified, he questioned Shin about the creature, prompting her to laugh and explain her ability to clone herself. Curious about her other powers, Misumi asked, but she promised to reveal them in due time. The residents of Emma's village relocated to the Orc Highlands, their new home. All was well. In the Orc Highlands, Misumi noticed his powers growing, realizing it was due to his proximity to Shin's influence. He found he could control many things with greater precision than before. His only vulnerability arose when Shin accessed his memories, compelling him to comply with her every request. Misumi observed that Shin was cataloging all the memories she accessed from his mind. He recognized this when he saw numerous memories before him, asking her never to expose them publicly again. Misumi resolved to create a secluded area far from the villagers' homes. There, he was astonished by a massive tree, which he managed to fell with his magic sword. Despite its small size, the sword's power was immense, allowing him to cut down the tree swiftly. However, Misumi soon realized he had injured himself. He attempted to heal himself with spells, but all efforts failed, prompting him to explore other options. His thoughts were interrupted by Shin's arrival, carrying the body of a severely injured old man. Misumi was astonished by the scene and inquired about it. Shin explained that a creature had attacked her territory. The remnants of the creature, littered with sharp debris, revealed its brutal nature. Shin informed Misumi that his human blood could lure the alien to them, much to Shin's regret. The alien soon emerged, launching a fierce assault on both Misumi and Shin. Misumi attempted to remain composed, channeling his magic to unleash a fire spell for maximum damage. Shin watched in awe, urging Misumi to strike. Oddly, despite Misumi's strongest spells, the creature absorbed the magic effortlessly. Moreover, it utilized the infected area to generate antibodies against Misumi's attacks. This creature's strength lies in its resilience, able to endure blows and convert them into healing. The wounded elder began to speak, and when Shin inquired about his identity, he revealed he was the dwarf leader. Meanwhile, Misumi was trying to understand the creature's attack patterns, which turned out to be a massive spider. However, the spider soon unleashed a more powerful strike, severely injuring Misumi, who managed to withstand the agony. Determined, Misumi summoned all his power, formed an ice spell, and unleashed it violently at the spider, eliminating it. Yet the effort caused Misumi to lose consciousness right after the battle concluded. After a while, the spider regained consciousness and spoke to Shin, revealing she was once a dragon in human form. The spider was astonished and chose to forge a pact with Misumi and Shin. Once the agreement was sealed, Misumi acquired a new superpower, and the spider transformed into a stunning girl. Misumi woke up, surprised to see the spider in her human guise, offering her assistance. After fulfilling his pact with the spider, Misumi was amazed by the numerous transformations occurring in Isekai. First, he gained the Shin Dragon, and now a powerful, beautiful spider. He couldn't wait to see what came next. Then, we saw the old dwarf, named Perrin, express gratitude to Misumi for winning the spider over. Especially since Misumi had saved the entire village of dwarves. The elder then requested permission for him and his kin to relocate to Misumi's village. When Misumi hesitated, Shin intervened, telling the elder they would agree if the dwarves paid taxes and shared the land. The elder consented and asked them to return in 2 days to persuade his people before moving in with Misumi. Misumi noticed the Shin Dragon and the spider were starting to feel envious of one another. He observed both trying to impress him, each vying for his attention. The jealousy peaked when Shin Dragon requested Misumi to give her a new name. After some thought, Misumi decided on the name Tama, which thrilled Shin. The spider, feeling left out, also asked for a name, prompting Misumi to think until he named her Miyu. She was overjoyed. The old dwarf successfully convinced his villagers and brought them to meet Misumi. Tama and Miyu introduced Misumi to the dwarf villagers, declaring him the master and bestowing the title of Little Master. The village elder Eldo approached, astonished to discover Misumi's leadership despite his youth. Yet he treated Misumi with utmost respect. Misumi was taken aback by the variety of unfamiliar monsters he encountered. When he inquired about their types, each class leader introduced themselves, pledging their loyalty to defend the village. After concluding his discussions with the new citizens, Misumi stepped away to reflect on the events. Suddenly, he was confronted by a group of humans armed with darts and arrows. They were ready for a fight, and as soon as they spotted Misumi, they began firing arrows. Misumi barely escaped, feeling frustrated, and asked the dwarves why the humans were pursuing him. They explained that the humans believed his eloquent speech marked him as a demon, a significant threat. Misumi realized he needed to learn their language, initially thinking it would be simple. However, he soon discovered that mastering slang was far more challenging than classical language. Determined, he pressed on, knowing it was essential for a peaceful life in this new world. By the end of the first week, Misumi felt no improvement. It was tough, but he persisted. It wasn't until a month later that any significant progress could be noted. Finally, Misumi managed to converse for a few minutes, using the vernacular correctly, which delighted him. Pleased with his progress, Misumi decided to visit the human village to reach the Zetsuya Adventurers Guild. Misumi, Miyu, and Tomo headed to the village, successfully passing through the gates by speaking slang to the guards. After this successful attempt, Misumi felt confident he could handle any interaction. Misumi pretended to be the son of a wealthy merchant, but he, Tomo, and Miyu needed to join the Adventurers Guild, requiring them to pass the exams. Initially, the guild officials set them up with simple tests, but she was taken aback when they breezed through them, even more so when she discovered their levels nearly surpassed the guild's top students. The official from the Adventurers Guild soon realized that Misumi held a Merchant's Guild license, which allowed him to level up quickly. Afterward, we found the veteran adventurers of the guild infuriated by these newcomers who had suddenly risen to the top ranks. They received their admission cards, and Misumi learned about his salary. While it was decent, he was frustrated by the steep prices for lodging, food, and drinks at the guild. Misumi, Tomo, and Miyu headed to their room, feeling optimistic, yet oblivious to the lurking danger. A voice trailed behind Misumi, and when he halted, he found a young girl. Miyu stepped in, shouting at the girl and demanding to know her intentions, but the girl got scared and ran to Misumi, tears streaming down her face. Misumi soothed the girl and told Miyu to back off. They had no choice but to take her back to their temporary home, which seemed ordinary. We noticed someone eavesdropping on the entire exchange, as if it were a planned event rather than a coincidence, as Misumi suspected. Misumi, Miyu, and the little girl returned to their lodging, where the girl began sharing her story. The girl, Rinon, explained that she and her sister had lived in a rented house, but eventually they were evicted. The issue is that Rinon has lost track of her sister, who vanished about a month ago. While Rinon recounted her tale, Misumi heard a commotion outside. Stepping outside, he spotted Tomo confronting some individuals who were tracking Rinon, and he noticed Tomo dispatching them effortlessly. Misumi pondered the enigma of the girl searching for her sister, racking his brain for potential leads. Rinon handed Misumi a drawing that closely resembled her sister. Grateful, Misumi assured her he would do everything possible to uncover the truth. He then informed her of the room she would be staying in, which made Tomo and Miyu envious, as usual. Misumi sensed a growing attraction to Tomo and Miyu, but he tried to push those thoughts aside. Instead, he aimed to advance in the Adventurers Guild while unraveling Rinon's mystery and aiding her in finding her sister. The following day, we saw Misumi walking through the village with Rinon, discussing her past, where she revealed her family were once powerful adventurers. However, she and her sister had fallen into hard times, struggling to survive, and their financial troubles worsened before her sister's disappearance. Meanwhile, Miyu and Tomo were alone at the house when an unfamiliar figure approached, catching them off guard. As the figure drew closer, they were astonished to discover it was Mills, the most formidable adventurer in the guild's history. Misumi's chat with Rinon led him to the place where she had recently worked, and he offered to accompany her to speak with the management about finding her sister. Upon arriving, Misumi cast an invisibility spell on himself, disappearing as Rinon entered the building. The manager began questioning Rinon about her living situation. Rinon mentioned Misumi and his companions, prompting the manager to instruct her to steal all their gold coins. When Rinon expressed shock, the man insisted it was necessary to settle her sister's debts and ultimately locate her. Miyu and Tomo discovered that despite Mills being the strongest adventurer in the village, he was also the leader of the local criminal enterprise, and they were stunned when he offered to help capture Misumi. Miyu and Tomo were taken aback and questioned his motives, to which he replied that Misumi was one of the most dangerous threats in their village. Naturally, Miyu and Tomo rejected his proposal and launched an attack on Mills and his henchmen, but Mills's immense magical power allowed him to erect a barrier that blocked their strikes. Meanwhile, Rinon felt conflicted. She didn't want to betray Misumi, who had helped her, yet robbing him seemed like the only way to find her sister. At that moment, Misumi appeared to reassure Rinon, claiming he could sense her thoughts, and promised they would find her sister without resorting to theft, which made Rinon very happy. We returned to Tomo and Miyu, witnessing them engaged in a fierce battle against Mills and his crew. Mills fought carelessly, overestimating his magical prowess and the strength of his men. However, Tomo and Miyu quickly taught him a harsh lesson, surprising Mills, who hadn't anticipated their strength. Even after their victory, jealousy lingered between them, leading to a competition over who contributed more to the win. They began boasting about their strength, claiming to have taken down more foes, which stirred up quite a ruckus in the village. Once the battle concluded, Rinon was finally reunited with her sister, and they were ecstatic. Her sister repeatedly apologized for the trouble she caused, and then Misumi took them back home. Misumi then scolded Tomo and Miyu for their excessive use of their powers. He grabbed some of Miyu's webs, tied them up, and tossed them outside. After the numerous battles that ravaged the village, much of it lay in ruins, prompting Tomo to seriously contemplate leaving, which delighted Miyu, who hoped to be alone with Misumi. Later, Rinon and Miyu chatted, with Rinon inquiring if she was Misumi's girlfriend. Miyu felt embarrassed and clarified that she was merely a follower, not his girlfriend. Misumi decided to leave the village, taking Rinon, her sister, and Miyu along with him. A flock of rare redbirds appeared. As soon as Rinon spotted them, she alerted Misumi that they were a rare and perilous species. Misumi instructed Miyu to engage these creatures. Rinon cautioned her against targeting the eyes or wings, while Rinon's sister pointed out that the monster's main vulnerability lies in their abdomen. However, Misumi had a change of heart at the last moment, opting to take action by drawing his bow and aiming at the creatures. His aim was so precise that every arrow struck true, taking down the monsters without a single miss. Miyu, Rinon, and her sister were astonished by Misumi's sharpshooting and began to feast on the slain insects, a familiar meal from their past before they became human. They also noticed the sapphire eyes of the insects, which significantly enhanced their power. Misumi then resolved to head toward the town of Segi, and after a lengthy trek, they finally arrived. Once there, Misumi took some time to explore the town before making his way to the Segi Adventurers Guild. He expected to find his Adventurers Guild ID card upgraded, but was taken aback to discover he remained at the same rank. Fortune favored him, however, when he learned that the guild's top job was from the Rembrandt Company, seeking a large quantity of sapphire eyes, exactly what he had from his recent battle. Rinon and her sister expressed their heartfelt gratitude to Misumi for his help and decided to part ways. Determined to make their farewell memorable, Misumi suggested they celebrate with a meal at a restaurant. That evening, they all entered a butcher shop. The delightful aroma of food soon captivated Misumi, and he was thrilled to see the meat, diving in and savoring its incredible flavor. Members from various sects in the village joined Misumi, and soon everyone was enjoying their meals and engaging in lively conversation. Before long, one of the dwarves challenged Misumi to an arm wrestling contest. Despite the dwarf's impressive strength, Misumi easily triumphed. After ordering more meat, the lively dinner came to a close, and everyone departed. Misumi chatted with Miyu about the events of the party, then asked her to head home alone. When Miyu inquired why, Misumi explained he needed to retrieve his belongings from the carriage before thieves struck again. Miyu felt delighted to finally have some time alone with Misumi, free from Tomo. She returned home solo, and shortly after, Misumi followed suit. Miyu wanted to spend the night chatting, but Misumi quickly fell into a deep slumber, much to her irritation. The next morning, Misumi accompanied Miyu to the dwarf village, where they soon encountered Emma, who was taken aback by Misumi's formal speech. She encouraged him to speak freely, in a manner befitting his esteemed status in the village. Misumi agreed, explaining that his formal tone stemmed from his time away, filled with various tasks and roles he had to adopt. He then decided to undertake extensive repairs in the village, successfully negotiating with all the sects for construction and renovation. Misumi asked Miyu if she had heard from Tomo recently, but she replied that she hadn't. When he inquired with Emma, she admitted she had no information about Tomo while they conversed. Eldo, the elderly dwarf and village elder, rushed over to Misumi, expressing his joy at seeing him and offering his assistance in improving the village. Eldo then presented some robes with extraordinary abilities to absorb all impacts, and although Misumi was hesitant, he ultimately chose one after trying it on. Misumi proceeded to Rembrandt's headquarters to deliver the package, informing the director that his initial mission was far more challenging than anticipated. At the Rembrandt facility, Misumi stood in the parking lot with another individual to hand over the ruby insect eyes to the company officials. When it was his turn, the person accompanying him stepped forward to perform the ritual, but Misumi was shocked to see them trembling like a frightened kitten. He understood the significance of those ruby eyes to the officials, realizing they valued them highly for extracting a rare substance through complex chemical processes. Suddenly, Misumi's clumsy roommate stumbled into the room and dropped the ruby eyes, prompting Misumi to leap forward and save the situation. Misumi's astonishment at Rembrandt's interest in the liquid faded when he uncovered the truth. He discovered that the owner's wife had recently fallen ill with a rare disease that cursed her, robbing her of beauty, hair, and humanity. Realizing this, Misumi offered to treat her, despite the manager's discomfort with the challenging nature of her condition. Eventually, he relented to Misumi's persistence. Misumi arrived at the company owner's wife's location, only to be attacked by her as soon as she laid eyes on him, striking with the ferocity of a wild beast. Ignoring her aggression, Misumi quickly requested medicine from the official accompanying him. Strangely, after the company owner's wife consumed a dose of the liquid derived from the ruby eyes, she regained much of her health, with most symptoms vanishing. Once the Rembrandt owner was convinced of Misumi's healing abilities, he mentioned that his daughter was also afflicted by the same illness. Misumi took another dose of the remedy and headed straight to his daughter's room, finding her suffering from similar symptoms, though not as severe as her mother's. He realized this when the girl told him to leave, indicating she still possessed some human emotions. As he approached her, the monster within her emerged and attacked, but he managed to administer the potion, causing most of her symptoms to fade and her appearance to stabilize. The Rembrandt family was astonished by the rare bravery Misumi displayed during the treatment. The company owner inquired about Misumi's identity, but he humbly replied that he was just an ordinary person who had fulfilled his duty. After completing his task, Misumi exited the company's headquarters, surprised to find Tomo and Mii waiting for him, eager to hear about everything he had done since their last encounter. Misumi began to explain, but was soon interrupted by a loud noise he initially thought was footsteps, though it sounded more like a stampede of enraged bulls approaching. Moments later, a crowd of fighters stormed in, immediately confronting Misumi. Tomo made her usual effort to win Misumi's approval, channeling her inner dragon to defend him. Naturally, Miu disapproved and chose to observe, but it wasn't long before Misumi and Tomo triumphed over the fighters. Misumi soon realized that the young man from Rembrandt was behind this scheme, orchestrated by the company's adversaries to undermine its market power. He revealed to Misumi, Miu, and Tomo that he had struck a deal with a villain to create a cursed substance, targeting those close to Rembrandt's family, starting with the owner's wife and daughter. Misumi requested Tomo to delve into the memories of this young man named Lime, and Tomo confirmed that he was indeed truthful. Lime feared Misumi would subject him to severe torture, but Misumi assured him he would be left alone to rebuild his life, provided he steered clear of evil. Lime felt a surge of joy, completely opposite to his grim expectations. Before Lime departed, Misumi urged him to apologize to the Rembrandt family for his misdeeds. However, when he attempted to make amends, the owner's brother sought to execute him, but the owner intervened, stating that his wife and daughter had recovered, and out of respect for Misumi, Lime would not be punished. During the battle, Tomo had shattered Lime's sword, so once tensions eased and they were on friendly terms, she gifted him a new one. Lime admired the sword, marveling at its craftsmanship, but Tomo reminded him that nothing comes without a price. He would need to act as her spy. Lime stared at her, bewildered, and asked her not to exaggerate. She was essentially asking him to be her servant, and Tomo confirmed that was indeed her intention. After completing his mission at Rembrandt, Misumi returned to the dwarf village, where everything seemed fine. However, during lunch with Tomo and Miu, Emma approached them with something important to share. Misumi prompted Emma to express her thoughts, and she began to speak. She expressed her desire for Misumi, along with Miu and Tomo, to oversee the training of the village's fighters, preparing them for any potential threats. Misumi consented to her request, assigning Tomo and Miu the task of gathering information on the fighters' various skills. Misumi then toured the village, overhearing some fighters in conversation. One fighter questioned another, wondering if it was really necessary to train under this fool. "I'd rather die." Misumi realized they were resistant to his training, bracing himself for a challenging day ahead. As usual, Tomo and Miu vied for Misumi's attention. While Tomo gathered intel for the fighters, Miu busied herself with more pressing matters, trying to win Misumi over with fresh fruit. Tomo returned to find the scene upsetting, informing Misumi that the fighters' abilities were below her expectations, making training them a daunting task. Emma, present during Tomo and Misumi's discussion, pointed out that the fighters might be reluctant to showcase their full potential to avoid starting training. Additionally, each class was hesitant to reveal their strategies and secrets to others. At that moment, Tomo devised a plan and presented it to Misumi, who called for all the fighters to gather. The fighters assembled, but Misumi remained silent. It was Tomo who took the lead. Her words intentionally incited rivalry among the factions, escalating tensions until clashes erupted. Tomo instructed each sect to select a fighter to face off against another sect's representative. Two factions chose their champions, igniting a fierce battle. Misumi watched, concerned about the unfolding chaos. He sensed that these fighters might just bring the village to ruin. The battle concluded with one fighter emerging victorious, yet Tomo unleashed her frustration on everyone, declaring that the fight merely showcased their lack of strength. She warned the fighters that if they continued at this level, any enemy would easily defeat them. Tomo's harsh words surprised Misumi, who felt sidelined, as if Tomo had taken over as the leader and forgotten about him. Tomo then announced an intensive training regimen where fighters would undergo daily rigorous training. At the end of each session, there would be individual battles to assess their progress. She kept motivating them, stating she would evaluate each fighter, and the top performer would join the ranks of strong defenders for the village. Misumi thought to himself, "When will this fool stop talking so I can eat in peace?" Tomo eventually wrapped up her speech, encouraging the fighters to adhere to her plan. Misumi accompanied Tomo to the Adventurers Guild to check his current level. He discovered his level had risen, but not as much as he had hoped, and the oldest adventurer had retired. Tomo then initiated intense training sessions for the fighters to quickly elevate their levels. Most fighters showed significant improvement, except for a few stubborn ones whom Tomo scolded daily. After completing their field training, Tomo led them to the toughest challenge, simulating real battle scenarios. She crafted a complete battlefield, mimicking an actual war, assigning each fighter a specific role. Despite their diverse backgrounds, the training unified them into a cohesive army. One day, Tomo challenged them to battle against a horde of monkeys. The assault was successful, with every fighter contributing except for the dwarf, who miscalculated the amount of poison he was supposed to deploy. Tomo warned him, "If you mess up like that again, you fool, you won't be on the team anymore." The fighters reached their final challenge, tasked with venturing out of Segi Village for a mission in the Tenerac forests. After a brief period, they returned to the village, reporting to Tomo that they had accomplished their objectives. Tomo celebrated, declaring they had transformed into a formidable force tasked with safeguarding the village. Misumi discovered from the warriors that Tenerac's woods brimmed with ruby eyes, prompting his decision to relocate there. Simultaneously, he aimed to establish a shop for selling items sourced from sapphire eyes, necessitating a visit to Rembrandt's owner. Despite the rules, the owner reflected on Misumi's past heroics in saving his wife and daughter, ultimately agreeing to grant him the store. Misumi, accompanied by Miyu and Tomo, ventured into the Tenerac forest, unaware that they were being watched. Meanwhile, adventurers were secretly listening in on Misumi, Miyu, Tomo, and Emma to uncover their intentions in the woods. In truth, Misumi sought a rare flower to create various products he intended to sell exclusively in his shop. Tomo and Miyu's rivalry persisted as they each vied for Misumi's attention. Tomo had just prepared a delicious meal for Misumi when Miyu seized the chance to feed him herself, igniting Tomo's anger. Misumi remained focused on his quest for the flower, casually asking his helpers if they had located it. One assistant assured him they had found the flower and provided coordinates to guide them. Misumi then began to celebrate his new shop, with everyone gathering to hear his speech. However, Misumi doubted his speaking skills and struggled to articulate much in front of the crowd. That night, Misumi called a meeting for the various classes to inform them of their new responsibilities. A representative from the lizard class, Lady, informed Misumi that their class was exceptionally strong and skilled in combat. Regarding the dwarf class, Misumi explained they would handle weapon manufacturing due to their exceptional blacksmithing abilities. Next, the bear class representative, larger than Misumi's worries about the new world, stepped forward. Misumi inquired about their class's role, and the representative revealed they would introduce all classes to the fictional city. Misumi found it amusing, as the bear's voice was unexpectedly soft for its size. Tomo was seen conversing with Miyu, who fretted over not informing Misumi about the ambrosia beings, guardians of the flower he sought. Tomo kept assuring her it wasn't a big deal. Meanwhile, Miyu couldn't discern if Tomo was genuinely advising her or trying to maneuver closer to Misumi. Suddenly, an errant arrow struck near them, startling both girls. Miyu, even more terrified, dashed to Misumi and embraced him. Fuming, Miyu muttered that Sly Girl never misses a chance to get close to Misumi. They questioned Misumi about the incident, and he explained he was merely practicing archery. To their astonishment, the stray arrow had veered far off from the targets Misumi had been aiming at. From their perspective, the only explanation was that Misumi's mana had surged. In essence, he was merging with the surrounding entities, a troubling sign that left Miyu in tears. Yet Misumi continued to comfort her as she clung to him, while Tomo nearly erupted with fury. That night, Miyu resolved to care for Misumi and hoped for a lengthy conversation. However, as soon as he returned home and Miyu began to speak, Misumi cut her off, stating he was heading to bed. Embarrassed, Miyu left. The following morning, Misumi strolled down the street to shop for his store. He unexpectedly encountered a stunning girl who began flirting with him. Out of nowhere, Miyu and Tomo appeared, intent on punishing Misumi. They dragged him home, questioning what he had done to make him interested in this unfamiliar girl. Misumi retorted, telling them to back off, as he had no time for their antics. He then headed to the store to purchase supplies for launching his new business. After completing his shopping, Miyu showed up, repeatedly apologizing for the previous night. Misumi reassured her that there was no need for apologies and everything was all right. The forest warriors were anxious about Misumi reaching the area filled with the rare red lotus flower. Thus, the forest warriors kept a close watch on Misumi and his companions. After wandering through the forest, Misumi and Miyu stumbled upon a location abundant with lotus flowers. Misumi chose to remain there, knowing the ambrosia beings would appear to guard the lotus flowers. However, the Lotus Guardians soon arrived, accusing Misumi and Miyu of theft. Misumi stepped closer to Miyu to shield her, grasping her hand. In that moment, Miyu forgot their predicament, wishing time would freeze so Misumi could keep holding her hand. Yet, the Flower Guardians wasted no time and launched a barrage of deadly fire arrows. Without Misumi's powerful cloaking spell, he and his companions would have vanished. A fierce chase ensued between Misumi, Miyu, and the Lotus Flower Guardians. Sensing imminent danger, Misumi attempted to reach out to Tomo telepathically, who was already aware of the unfolding situation. Yet her jealousy held her back from stepping in. She kept muttering to herself, "Let that fool handle it." Of course, she was referring to Miyu, her anger flaring after witnessing Misumi holding her hand. When Misumi sought her assistance, she declined, insisting Miyu would manage in her own way. In times of fear, she turns to her favorite food. Misumi recalled that Miyu's favorite food was humans, realizing Tomo would rather perish than see him with her. Misumi had no interest in this absurdity. He found himself in serious peril as the flower guards encircled him, launching an attack on him and Miyu. Misumi urged Miyu to summon her powers, mirroring her actions to confront the guards. Before the fight commenced, Misumi made one final plea to the guards, stating he only wished to converse, not to steal their flowers. He claimed to be a merchant in search of rare items for his shop, not a thief. The guards accepted his explanation, introducing themselves, and Misumi recognized one as Aqua and the other as Iris. Once their discussion concluded, Aqua and Iris invited Misumi and Miyu to the Council of Elders, who handle all visitors to the village. During their journey, Misumi discovered the village was named Ogre Forest Village, safeguarded by powerful magical barriers. They soon reached the Council of Elders, who began interrogating them about their purpose for visiting. Misumi explained he was a merchant seeking rare medicinal materials for his shop. However, some council members were skeptical, sensing that Misumi and Miyu's aura was too potent for mere humans. Adono, a wild and chatty young man, barged into the conversation, incessantly questioning Misumi and Miyu's identities. Knowing Adono trained Aqua and Iris, Misumi criticized them for being bested by him and Miyu. Misumi felt uneasy about Adono being just a trainer, suspecting he was linked to demons and harbored dark secrets. Thus, Misumi instructed Miyu to keep an eye on Adono, though she was pleased to have a task. Deep down, she felt annoyed, sensing Misumi was merely using her. Regardless, she began observing Adono and soon realized Misumi was correct. She witnessed Adono during a psychic session conversing with demons. One day, during a session, Adono fused with the demon he was communicating with, attempting to seize control of the village. Misumi resolved to confront him, while the demon dismissed Misumi's power as trivial. Summoning all his spiritual energy, Misumi unleashed his strongest spells, obliterating the demon's dark energy, astonishing the villagers. However, the villagers were enraged at Misumi for daring to use his magic against one of their own. At that moment, Tama appeared, declaring herself the Great Shin Dragon. She stated she was merely a follower of Misumi, prompting the villagers to alter their attitude towards him. Misumi captured Adono in his demonic form, interrogating him about his use of spells. Adono explained he did it to maintain his strength, ensuring no one could harm him. That's when Misumi proposed a deal. Adono would reveal the book of demonic spells in exchange for his life. Miyu and Tama were taken aback by Misumi's request, stepping forward to eliminate Adono before he could comply. Misumi urged them to hold back, insisting he sought the spells for knowledge to protect them in the future. But Tama warned Misumi that it wouldn't be that simple. There exists a gift that would hinder his understanding of the spells. When Misumi inquired about this gift, she explained it was a human who attempted to traverse different worlds but became lost. As Misumi continued his dialogue with Adono, he realized Adono was one of those lost gifts. Adono lamented that he would never return to his original world. Misumi urged him to demonstrate his strength, promising to do his utmost alongside Miyu and Tama to help him return home. However, as Misumi began his efforts to send Adono back, Adono shifted into his human form. He expressed his willingness to join Misumi, forming a trio with Miyu, Tama, and Adono. Suddenly, an unexpected event occurred as Tama began to bleed and lost consciousness, leaving Adono and Miyu distraught. Misumi was bewildered by Tama's condition, but Adono urged everyone to act swiftly, having heard an explosion before Tama collapsed. Upon exiting their location, Misumi and Adono were shocked to find many villagers injured, teetering between life and death. This terrified Misumi, especially since he couldn't use healing magic due to his current guild score, needing to level up first. Adono offered to heal the wounded, and Misumi consented. Misumi then conceived a brilliant idea to merge his magical power with his mana to at least revive the injured. Adono urged him to conserve his mana, assuring him he would handle the remaining infected. After searching, Misumi confronted the culprit behind the explosion, but she attempted to kill him. Despite her wielding a large sword, Misumi triumphed using his magical abilities and a small dagger. The following day, Misumi noticed Tama was recovering, but mourned the lives lost in the explosion, holding a village funeral. Tama and Miyu resumed their playful bickering, with Tama teasingly highlighting Misumi's concern for her, much to Miyu's irritation. Miyu insisted that all the attention was accidental, claiming Misumi's defense of Tama was merely impulsive. Their constant arguing drove Misumi crazy, and he reminded them that they wouldn't change, no matter what. Misumi started strategizing on how to shield the village from future threats, assigning specific tasks to each class. He directed their leader to organize patrols throughout the day to monitor the village's surroundings for any intruders. Other classes received tasks like tending to the injured and gathering intelligence. Misumi planned to construct an invisible barrier around the village, tricking intruders into thinking they were in a fake city. Guards would report the number of newcomers, allowing Misumi to prepare defenses against potential enemies. The dwarf tribe leader approached Misumi, offering to manage the warehouse for collecting debris. Misumi requested the debris be disposed of promptly to prevent its use in dark magic. The dwarf chieftain assured him he would handle the task diligently. The people of Segi felt immense gratitude towards Misumi for saving their village from impending doom. Misumi humbly stated he had merely fulfilled his duty, emphasizing their collective efforts were crucial. Next, we shift to Roodsgard Academy, where Misumi met with the Rembrandt owners to discuss financing his new store. He requested a map to pinpoint his store's location within Segi. Upon receiving the map, Misumi felt confident that he had sufficiently secured the village from future threats. He began discussing business details, and the owner promised to write a recommendation to encourage neighboring stores to collaborate. Misumi expressed his gratitude, but the owner insisted it paled in comparison to Misumi's past efforts to help his family. Deciding to be honest, Misumi removed his mask, bracing for immediate dismissal. The owner handled it gracefully, stating he wasn't concerned about his family's appearance during their illness. Returning to Segi, Misumi informed Miyu, Tomo, and Adono that he needed to leave the village temporarily. He aimed to deepen his understanding of magic and science to elevate his shop above all others. His friends felt disheartened, but Misumi revealed he had a special gift for them. The gift included books filled with his memories and knowledge, which they would need to study diligently until his return. After saying his goodbyes and packing, Misumi was suddenly ambushed. Two striking girls attacked, but Misumi was more concerned when one of the fighters landed a brutal blow, severing several fingers. Though confused, he sensed the immense power radiating from his attackers. Frozen in shock, he stared at his injured hand and questioned the girls about their motives. They revealed the shocking truth. The war between humans and demons had begun, and he was now their target. Fortunate to have the master's protection from his original world, Misumi retaliated. However, their strength far surpassed his, rendering his attack ineffective. Forced to adapt, Misumi abandoned lightning strikes in favor of stealth. Instead of attacking, the girls set numerous traps to prevent his escape. Misumi decided to learn more about them. They introduced themselves as Lancer and Sophie. He presented himself as a simple merchant wanting to buy and sell, but they insisted on fulfilling their duty to eliminate him. With no other option, Misumi summoned all his spiritual energy and mana, managing to fend off their assault. Lancer and Sophie were astonished. Their lethal spell should have killed him instantly, yet it hadn't. They realized Misumi was a formidable opponent, making the confrontation much more challenging. Sophie approached him, and Misumi felt a surge of fear, especially with her powerful weapon. However, Misumi's strength proved greater than Sophie's sword, shattering it with a single strike. Lancer charged at him like a bull, but it was too late. The demon army had arrived and began attacking everyone. Determined to end the chaos, Misumi drew upon the power of his rings. Focusing on a water spell to counter the demon's fire, he managed to engulf everyone and escape swiftly. The Rembrandt owners were astounded to learn someone had thwarted the demon army. Misumi returned to the village, declaring Mayu and Tomo his top lieutenants, which delighted them despite the usual jealousy. He expressed gratitude to the dwarf leader for the exceptional weapons that played a crucial role in their victory. Misumi started crafting his initial medical items, possessing the magical power to mend even the toughest injuries in mere seconds. From a distance, the owners of Rembrandt's company observed everything, clearly impressed by Misumi's remarkable skills. He transformed Segi from a destitute, weak village into a formidable settlement with a renowned army and a thriving shop specializing in unique magical goods. Misumi resolved to finally embark on a long-overdue quest to locate his parents across different realms. While lost in thought, Emma interrupted him, announcing that everyone had gathered for the banquet celebrating the store's grand opening, eagerly awaiting his speech. As he approached the sect's meeting place to deliver his speech, memories of his entire journey flooded back, reminding him that life in this human realm isn't so bad. Upon reaching the venue, he noticed the ongoing bickering between Tomo and Miyu, thinking life would be simpler without those two fools. Here we go again. Misumi's back for Season 2. Despite his success in this alternate world, many teachers here were eager for him to leave. Yet Misumi persevered in the icy skies, thriving as a merchant, profiting from the exclusive medicinal formulas his shop offered. He often reminisced about his parents, who once inhabited the icy sky realm. As time passed, Misumi contemplated broadening his horizons and headed to Rothskard Academy to establish a new store. A few days later, Misumi, joined by Adomo, arrived in Rothskard, preoccupied with thoughts of Tomo and Miyu, who awaited their return. He encountered Miyu and Tomo, whose rivalry reignited as each vied to prove to Misumi that she was superior. Miyu prepared a tasty rice dish for Misumi, but Tomo intentionally withheld the fact that she had used the wrong ingredients to set her up. Miyu's blunder involved adding a rare metal to the rice, which was completely unsuitable for Misumi, whose body and world couldn't handle metals. However, the dwarf class had no issues with minerals, devouring the rice with enthusiasm. Afterward, Misumi thought, those two fools are causing chaos everywhere, and now it's spilling over to dinner. To escape the madness, Misumi opted for a meal at a restaurant, craving his favorite slime dish. Once he finished eating, he generously tipped the server and headed to the Adventurers Guild, where he found a girl mourning the brutal attack on her village. Although he wanted to assist her, she ignored him and stormed out of the guild in frustration. However, Misumi followed her and noticed she was accompanied by an injured werewolf. He offered his help, but the girl was taken aback, repeatedly apologizing for not noticing him in the guild. Misumi then asked them to share the details of what had transpired in their village, and they explained that it was under constant attack. He reassured them, saying everything would turn out all right. The girl and the wounded werewolf were astonished, but Misumi wasted no time and whisked them straight to their village. Upon arriving in Hayama, the girl informed him that the village's official language was slang, which would make his speech seem out of place. She also mentioned she would inform the villagers of his arrival, much to her surprise. Misumi clarified that he was merely a humble merchant and adventurer. Naturally, this puzzled the villagers, who had noticed Misumi's extraordinary abilities and doubted he was just an amateur. What truly amazed the villagers was that Misumi was doing all this for them, striving to protect them from looming threats. Misumi expressed his desire to fortify the village against any foes, warning that if evil spread to nearby settlements, devastation would follow. Meanwhile, Miyu and Tomo were still on the hunt for the most delectable recipes to impress Misumi, competing fiercely with one another. They established a judging panel with representatives from each category seated, eagerly awaiting the scrumptious dishes. Unbeknownst to them, Tomo and Miyu were clueless about poisonous and harmful herbs, one being a dragon and the other a spider. Consequently, they concocted numerous recipes that tasted far worse than the village's attack. As usual, each was determined to outshine the other, striving to prove their superiority. Yet the crowd was too engrossed in their meals to notice. Meanwhile, Misumi was busy tracking down the attackers, confronting one and declaring that he would end their evil. Misumi and Adomo set off in search of clues to unravel the mystery behind the village's assault. Despite the silence, Misumi remained uncertain about what lay ahead. We traveled back in time before Misumi ventured to the icy skies, witnessing his first encounter with Adanashi, who clearly had feelings for him. However, Misumi grew anxious upon seeing her, leading to a brief conversation before he took his leave. Adanashi kept reminding herself of her deep affection for Misumi. She then approached her teacher, who informed her that an evil demon army was attacking her world. Consequently, she resolved to send 2 heroes to combat the demon forces. Yet, Adanashi expressed her reluctance to participate in such a battle, prompting her teacher to suggest that this challenge could bring her closer to the friend she loved but couldn't speak to. Adanashi slyly regarded her teacher, deducing that she was referring to Misumi. Thus, Adanashi accepted the teacher's proposal. We then shifted to the kingdom of Limia, her homeland. She assured the kingdom's inhabitants that she would shield them from the encroaching evil demon army. In truth, Adanashi was completely inexperienced in combat and had no knowledge of swordsmanship. She approached the Adventurers Guild in the kingdom, seeking a female warrior named Hiki to teach her swordsmanship. Though initially hesitant, Hiki eventually consented to help. Adanashi started her training with Hiki along the outskirts of Lemia. One fateful day, a pack of aggressive wolves launched an attack, prompting Hiki to fight valiantly. The wolves proved too formidable. Out of nowhere, a courageous girl appeared, outsmarting both Hiki and Adanashi, who expressed their gratitude and began to recognize her. The girl introduced herself as Chii, a priestess of Laurel, and invited Hiki to join her group. Despite Chie's bravery, Hiki hesitated to accept her invitation. The battles against the demon forces raged on, with Limia's fighters achieving victory after victory. However, one day, they encountered a colossal monster they had never seen before, the Black Catastrophe Spider. A fierce clash erupted between the spider and the kingdom's warriors, with the spider landing devastating blows. For the first time, Chie faced this enormous beast head-on. Yet she stood her ground, unafraid, and launched her attack. Ultimately, the monster overpowered them. Despite the battle's challenges and the injuries sustained by many fighters, Chie remained resolute, vowing to avenge them in the next encounter. Meanwhile, Misumi felt a sense of boredom, with nothing to occupy his time in this world. One day, while asleep, he dreamt of a teacher from another realm who spoke to him extensively, claiming she had chosen him for a purpose. Amazed, Misumi inquired about her reasons. She explained that he was meant to protect her world from the demon army. Misumi was astonished by her words, dismissing it as merely a dream. However, the teacher continued, revealing her intention to select another hero to aid in defeating the demon forces. She outlined the benefits he would gain if he accepted her proposal. She promised him immense strength and the ability to recover from fatigue swiftly. Misumi agreed to her offer, pledging to give his all and not disappoint her. He was transported to her world, where he encountered a princess named Front, who introduced him to a knight. The knight's name was Jinya. Shortly after Yukonatsu, the palace's head of magical formulas, arrived, and Misumi met a dragon summoner named Mura. That evening, Princess Front confided in Misumi that both she and Jinya were fond of him, which was quite significant. Misumi was taken aback by this revelation. Although Front mentioned it, it was clear she had deeper feelings for him. As Misumi made his way to Rothscard Academy, the battle between Limia's forces and the demon army was set to commence to reclaim Stella's fortress. The conflict had already begun, showcasing the optimism of Limia's Hayama army, confident in their victory over the demons. Their princess was equally determined, rallying the troops by stating their strength was nearly 5 times that of the demon army, urging them to secure a swift victory. The leaders of Limia's army were surprised by the princess's choice to engage in battle at night, given the challenges of nocturnal combat and their lack of experience. Ultimately, they resolved to fight regardless of the time, assuring everyone of a quick victory to reclaim the fortress. Lemia's army prepared for battle, seeking the master's blessing before heading into the fray. Meanwhile, the demon army had gathered extensive intelligence on Lemia's forces, relaying this information to their leaders to ensure they were ready to defeat them. As soon as the demon army's leader spotted Lemia's forces approaching, she signaled the start of the battle. Upon seeing the demon army advance, Lemia's soldiers launched a fierce counterattack. Lemia's troops were astonished by the demon army's apparent weakness, especially after inflicting heavy casualties early in the fight. Their surprise led them to suspect a trap, prompting Lemia's leadership to caution all soldiers. The demon army's leader quickly interjected, hurling insults at the Lemia forces. Did you really think it would end so easily? That victory over the demon army would be a walk in the park? Then, the demon leader unleashed a devastating spell, creating a massive chasm that swallowed most of Lemia's fighters. Despite the odds, the fighters refused to surrender, struggling to escape the pit, with many managing to do so. Unbeknownst to them, those who emerged were met with a giant ogre known as EO. The ogre engaged them with immense strength, and despite Lemia's courage, they struggled to overcome him due to his size and power. The greatest challenge was EO's ability to drain the magical powers of Lemia's warriors, yet they held out against him until dawn, surprising EO, who expected to defeat them all by nightfall. Determined, the Lemia fighters prepared for one final powerful assault, using their magical abilities. They attacked EO in succession, managing to inflict injuries, but it wasn't enough to bring him down. One fighter, Navarre, chose to sacrifice herself, unleashing her strongest spells while her teammates escaped. Navarre's victory over EO brought sorrow to her comrades, who wished she hadn't had to make that sacrifice, hoping they could have finished the battle together. Despite the demon army's strength, Lemia's forces triumphed and reclaimed Stella's fortress. While this battle unfolded, Misumi was unwell, receiving care from Tamo and Miu. We then saw Miu walking alongside Tamo, discussing Misumi and how he had earned a special place in everyone's hearts. They also talked about the upcoming battles Misumi would face against the demon army to protect the nearby villages. During that period, Misumi was more focused on trading and exploring the shops in Rothsgard than on fighting, often strolling the streets with Edomo to check out the merchandise and strategize how to stand out among the numerous merchants. Out of nowhere, a group of young men and women clad in Rothsgard Academy uniforms appeared. To his surprise, the atmosphere turned hostile as they began to taunt Misumi. They showcased their various skills, casting spells they had learned at the academy. For the first time, Misumi felt the absence of Miu and Tamo, whose presence would have kept these troublemakers at bay. Misumi attempted to rely on his intellect rather than brute force, but the provocations from the academy students pushed him to teach them a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. He unleashed one of his most formidable spells, sending the youths fleeing, but as always, his charm was hard to resist. One girl from the group took a particular interest in him. She mentioned working as a waitress at a nearby eatery and invited him to visit soon. Once she left, Misumi and Adamo recalled that they hadn't lifted the spell they cast on the academy students. Thus, they were taken aback to see the students soaring through the air, pleading to be brought back down, though Adamo was reluctant to help. Misumi urged him to dispel the spell so the youths could safely return to the ground, and Adamo complied. Misumi then expressed to Adamo his desire to attend Rothsgard Academy. When Adamo inquired about his reasoning, Misumi explained he aimed to take the entrance exam to enroll and officially license his shop for trading in the village. Adamo cautioned him about the Academy's challenging exam, revealing it was designed by the owners of Rembrandt's company, meant for only the most skilled. Meanwhile, the owners of Rembrandt's company observed Misumi, predicting he would fail the test. The day of the exam arrived, and Misumi accompanied Adamo to the academy. Misumi inquired about the nature of the test, and the clerk informed him it was for recruiting new teachers. He asked if there was a possibility to switch to an easier test, even if it was for hiring administrative staff. The clerk responded rudely, stating the conditions were clearly posted outside, and today's test was strictly for teacher recruitment. This infuriated Adomo, who began to rage, attempting to unleash his most powerful magic against the clerk. However, Misumi intervened, trying to prevent the situation from escalating. Ultimately, Misumi resolved to take the risk and enter the exam room, regardless of the challenges ahead. Inside the room, Misumi took a seat, and the official entered to explain the testing procedure. Candidates were required to collect colored reballs within 3 days. They had to utilize the provided tools to catch the balls, as using any other method would cause the balls to explode. The official also informed them that they needed to arrange their own food and drinks, as the academy wouldn't supply any during this period. Misumi thought it seemed simple and immediately began attempting to catch the balls. To his shock, he discovered that his spells and magical abilities were ineffective against the balls, causing them to explode each time he tried. Even when he attempted a weaker spell, the balls detonated, leading him to despair over his chances of success. Yet, he refocused his energy, realizing he needed to conserve his magical power, and managed to catch 2 balls, bringing him joy. Afterward, Misumi decided to savor his first meal in 2 days before heading to bed to recover from the exhausting days. The next morning, he was startled by a figure in black who unexpectedly attacked him with a poison blade, but Misumi quickly cast a spell to become immune to poison and retaliated with a powerful kick that sent the attacker sprawling. He then successfully retrieved the last ball and brought it back to the academy, where he learned that all the other candidates had withdrawn after being threatened by the man in black. The test administrator handed Misumi the 3 balls, revealing the biggest surprise. They were all different colors, showcasing Misumi's extraordinary strength, especially since no one had ever passed this test with such skill. Misumi received his acceptance letter from the academy, along with a license to open his new shop. He was then summoned to the academy to commence his duties as one of the instructors. Misumi informed Edomo that they would head to the academy by day's end, but first, they needed to stop by a nearby restaurant for a hearty meal. He visited the restaurant where Luria, the girl he had met earlier, worked, recognizing her immediately. Upon seeing him, Luria eagerly prepared a feast to serve him. After finishing their meal, Misumi and Edomo arrived at the academy, where the new teacher's receptionist began explaining the academy's work system. She informed Misumi that he would start as a part-time employee until he was promoted to full-time. A teacher named Bright entered and introduced himself as a full-time instructor at the academy. Bright mentioned he would send some of his students to Misumi so he could begin teaching them about magic. He also noted that most students in this year's class were exceptional. Misumi thought to himself, "You're not being honest, you fool. I've defeated your students using my simplest spells before." Misumi then entered the library to get acquainted with the books, recognizing the librarian named Eva. He was astonished by how much Eva resembled Luria and was surprised that she knew so much about him. His astonishment faded when he realized they were sisters. In the meantime, Miyu was focused on enhancing her culinary skills to impress Misumi with his favorite dishes, though it proved challenging initially. Miyu started to grasp all the essential aspects of cooking. A week later, Misumi prepared to begin his magic lectures for students at the academy. However, the students perceived him as an ineffective teacher, doubting his magical prowess. Yet, as always, the female students were drawn to his striking looks. Misumi addressed the class in a monotone, warning them that the training would be rigorous. He inquired about their skills, and they boasted of their high levels, claiming each could manipulate an element. Misumi countered that controlling just one element only placed them at an intermediate level, which understandably infuriated the students, who felt judged. Determined to teach them a lesson, Misumi instructed them to step back and observe his duel with Adamo. As the battle commenced, the students felt foolish compared to Misumi, who unleashed spells meant for advanced practitioners. After witnessing the fight, their opinions shifted, realizing they had misjudged Misumi. They were now eager for the start of Misumi's lectures. Oddly, several students were intimidated by Misumi's magical abilities, leaving only 5 remaining. Seeing the small group, Misumi wondered where the others had disappeared to. He shrugged it off and assured the students present that he would do his utmost to help them improve. The first introduced himself as Casper, the second as Dana, the third was a stunning fighter named Abelia, the fourth was Izumo, and the fifth was Jin. Misumi promptly began training these fighters to harness their mana, guiding them and correcting their errors. Unfortunately, the fighters were too weak, and even his simplest spells overwhelmed them. Despite this, Misumi proved to be an adept teacher, recognizing each fighter's unique strengths. He compiled a comprehensive report and submitted it to the Academy administration, aiming to enhance each fighter's strengths and other subjects. We then witnessed a tense moment as a man in black, who had previously tried to thwart Misumi, conversed with Bright, who urged him to eliminate Misumi swiftly. 2 weeks had passed since Misumi became a teacher at the academy and opened his shop, where he was seen instructing the staff on product locations. One surprising aspect of this world for Misumi was the prevalence of polygamy, with every girl he encountered proposing marriage. Though he had settled in, Misumi remained oblivious to the lurking dangers. One day, Tomo and Miyu unknowingly walked past a peculiar house. Inside, the occupants were scheming against Misumi. After entering, Tomo managed to capture one of the conspirators and began interrogating him. When he offered to join her team and comply with her wishes, she quickly recognized his cowardice. Miyu believed that the best way to win Misumi's heart was through his stomach, dedicating time to mastering cooking and discovering new dishes. Miyu later met Hiki, and they engaged in discussions about combat skills, cooking, and various topics. Hiki's assistants joined in, and they all wandered through the forest. Just as everything seemed fine, a massive, terrifying green monster attacked. Miyu chose to stand back and observe as Hiki and her assistant confronted the sudden threat. She noticed that Hiki and her assistant's magical gear appeared quite outdated. Miyu also observed Verda, one of Hiki's fighters, battling valiantly despite his inadequate equipment. The assault was fierce, and despite Verda's efforts, the monster inflicted serious injuries, alarming the rest of the team. At that moment, Miyu decided to abandon her cooking duties and stepped in to confront the monster. Though Hiki and his team doubted her, Miyu effortlessly defeated the monster. She then turned to Hiki and his team, saying, "You fools need to recognize your own capabilities. In battle, it's crucial to quickly identify your opponent's weaknesses before they can finish you off." Hiki's fighters were astonished by Miyu's extraordinary prowess in her fight against the monster. They were even more surprised since Miyu displayed no signs of strength. The fighters inquired about their teammate Verda, and Miyu reassured them that his injury was minor and treatable. Suddenly, Miyu noticed a significant change in all the fighters, and before she could ask, she was caught off guard by a new attack from the supposedly defeated monster. Although the monster managed to injure her, Miyu ultimately overcame it with great effort. Miyu and the other fighters proceeded to meet the various factions in Seigi. There, Miyu searched for Misumi, especially eager for him to see her in her new dress. Miyu then approached the leader of the dwarf tribe, requesting the creation of sturdier weapons, as her old ones had proven ineffective against a recent monster attack. While Miyu was keen on fighting, she continued to work on her cooking skills alongside another fighter named Perrin. Over time, Miyu's abilities improved significantly, and Perrin assured her that Misumi would fall in love with her cooking at their first meeting. Misumi and Adomo brainstorm fresh marketing strategies for his store, while juggling his teaching duties and passion for his business. Once Misumi wraps up his academy commitments, he chooses to head back to the dwarf village, which eagerly awaits his return. As Misumi steps into the village, joy erupts among the residents. Of course, Tamo and Miyu are back at it, each vying for Misumi's attention once more. Seeing them, Misumi thinks, "I thought I was done with this nonsense." Miyu starts flaunting her culinary skills to provoke Tamo, serving a special soup for Misumi and asking for his thoughts after he finishes. At first glance, the soup reminded Misumi of Saege's, but after tasting it, he declared it delicious and unlike anything he'd had before. In that moment, Miyu felt all her efforts over the past months were worth it. She shot Tamo a knowing glance as if to say, "Game over, you fool. I'm the one who will come out on top after Misumi finishes." Tamo requested a meeting, eager to share some crucial information. Misumi arrives at the meeting spot where Tamo recounts her findings from her inspection of the monster-infested area. Tamo reveals she encountered a hero named Owahashi from the Grotonian Empire, who happens to be Misumi's age. Misumi asked for details, but Tamo warned him that despite being a hero, Owahashi's behavior was quite odd. Misumi decided to keep this vital information to himself and thanked Tamo for her thoroughness. When Tamo got too close, Misumi felt the heat rising. Even at night, the temperature was unusually high, prompting Misumi to investigate. After some contemplation, Misumi realized he was the source of the heat. as his travels through different worlds had caused weather changes. Miyu was thrilled that Misumi enjoyed her cooking, but when Parain invited her on a perilous mission, she declined, wanting to stay with him. Parain got frustrated, accusing her of being self-centered, yet he tried to charm her with new cooking techniques. Miyu stood firm in her decision. The next morning, Misumi strolled through the village, amazed by its growth, with dwarves and others planting various flora, enhancing the village's beauty. Misumi then checked on the weapon manufacturing progress and was shocked to find a blood-stained cloth at the dwarf tribe leader's workshop. When he inquired about the cloth, the leader explained that Miyu had brought it, asking for weapon improvements after being injured by a fierce monster. Standing beside Misumi, Adomo confessed to creating the monster that attacked Miyu, revealing he had fused medium and low-level spirits to enhance its power. Annoyed, Misumi snapped, "Where was your head when you made such a formidable creature?" Adomo kept apologizing. Misumi then learned from Emma that he needed to meet new recruits, so he set off to meet them. Miyu seized every chance to introduce new, delightful recipes to Misumi, who had become a huge fan of her cooking. Just when Misumi thought all was well, villains schemed to infiltrate his team with their own minions. Misumi informed the dwarf village of his impending return to Rothschild, a revelation that saddened everyone, especially Miyu and Tamil. Miyu questioned Misumi about his trip back to Rothschild, but he explained he had many matters to organize. Seeing Miyu's sorrow, Misumi promised to return to the dwarf village as soon as he could. Upon arriving in Rothschild, Misumi met with Adomo, who began updating him on the store's progress during his absence. Most of the news was positive, with sales significantly higher than when Misumi first opened the store. Delighted, Misumi rewarded all the employees with bonuses. Next, he checked in on his students and resumed his magic lectures, welcoming Rembrandt's daughter and wife to his class. Misumi was thrilled to see them, especially since he had helped them during the first season. He began explaining new lessons to the students before moving on to practical exercises. Dividing the class into two groups, one faced a blue lizard monster while the other had to confront Misumi directly, and he noticed some improvement. He urged them to focus on accurately targeting their strikes for a direct hit. Though it was their first class, Rembrandt's wife and daughter were thoroughly enjoying the experience. After class, Misumi decided to have a private conversation with Rembrandt's daughter, Karen. He noticed she spoke the demon language, indicating her origins. And of course, demons are Misumi's primary adversaries. Misumi sat down with Adomo and Karn, probing Karen about her reasons for joining his team despite being a demon. Karn interjected, explaining she meant no harm and was simply trying to make a difference. Misumi then learned from Adomo that a general from Segi wished to speak with him. So Misumi decided to meet him. Upon arrival, he recognized the general as Lime. Misumi thought to himself, "Yes, I remember you, you repulsive name." Their conversation revealed that Lime was now acting as a spy for Tamil. Lime assured him that Tamil had requested his assistance and promised to provide crucial information. Misumi expressed his gratitude and insisted that he urgently needed to look into recent events in the city, particularly the abduction of several half-humans. He also shared with Lime his strong suspicion that the Assassin's Guild was behind it. Once Lime departed, Adomo candidly warned Misumi to be cautious of anything linked to the demon army, as they are known for their deceit. Misumi agreed and resolved to visit Rembrandt's residence to assess his wife and daughter for any ill intentions toward his team. Rembrandt's family was astonished by the kindness Misumi showed them at home. He clarified that he was merely strict and instructive. They expressed their heartfelt thanks for freeing them from the curse, but Misumi humbly stated he was just fulfilling his duty. From their conversation, Misumi concluded they harbored no malicious intent toward him or his team. After leaving their home, he met with Adomo and assured him that clarity would come in due time. Meanwhile, Lime was combing the streets of Rothschild for leads on the half-human kidnappings, but found no substantial information. Eventually, he stumbled upon a peculiar shop filled with new clothing. Lime sensed this could be a promising lead, but then he heard footsteps approaching. Misumi was keenly interested in the results of Lime's investigation, but to his shock, the store staff informed him that Lime hadn't returned since his last visit. To complicate matters, everyone had lost the ability to communicate with him telepathically. Feeling betrayed by the demon army, Adomo decided to conduct his own investigation. As for Lime, he had unwittingly arrived at a location belonging to the demon army, where half-humans were indeed being abducted. However, the footsteps he heard belonged to a formidable fighter. When Lime attempted to reach out telepathically to Misumi, the fighter interrupted, saying, "Sorry, fool, you can't communicate with anyone now." Indeed, the fighter cast a spell that severed telepathic connections. When Lime swung his sword, the fighter effortlessly blocked it and retaliated with a blow that sent Lime crashing down. Lime thought it was the end for him, but then Eva, the Academy's librarian, appeared to defend him, and they made their escape. As they fled, they were taken aback to discover several kidnapped half-humans. Lime and Eva were stunned, but there was no time to act. Adomo attempted to summon Miyu and Tomo, but was surprised to see Lime and Eva, who recounted their ordeal. Misumi then requested a detailed account from Eva, who explained she had been following Lime due to sensing his danger. Afterward, we saw Misumi reviewing Lime's report. He was astonished by the mysterious fighter who had appeared and easily defeated Lime. Misumi approached Eva to inquire about this fighter, but she revealed it was her first encounter with him. Misumi was taken aback, knowing of Eva's past ties to the demon army, but she explained that all records had been lost. While Misumi pondered this, Lime burst into the room like a bull, announcing he had finally located the fighter who had bested him. In reality, the fighter had come to Misumi instead. Misumi quickly summoned Miyu and Tomo, preparing for the fighter's arrival. The fighter entered and introduced himself as the president of the Adventurers Guild, shocking everyone, and then apologized for his actions toward Lime. Misumi began to recognize the fighter, and before he could state his name, Tomo interjected, revealing it was Lotto. Misumi inferred that Lotto had once been a dragon, but Tomo clarified that he was no ordinary dragon, but one of the mightiest, which sparked Tomo's jealousy. Lotto then elaborated on how he established the guild a millennium ago, creating a system designed for longevity. He also mentioned that he intentionally infused the guild's membership cards with elements from the human world, inspired by video games. Seizing the opportunity, Misumi asked Lotto about the chances of returning to his home world. Lotto replied that it was nearly impossible, as Misumi's destination was random and unpredictable. Lotto then departed with Tomo, who seemed eager to ask him something she couldn't while Misumi was present. Tomo, alone with Lotto, inquired about the lifespan of humans from the human world, which Lotto confirmed was only 100 years. Misumi, despite his wariness of demons, was approached by Rembrandt's wife, who wished to speak with him before leaving town. They met at the dining table, where she began to share numerous warnings. Her first warning concerned the two girls Misumi had hired at the store. Next, she cautioned him about Adamo, claiming he was possessed, lacked loyalty, and could betray Misumi at any moment. When Misumi relayed this to Miyu and Tomo, they suggested that this information might be inaccurate and advised him to be cautious of everyone. Misumi expressed his deep concern for Eva's safety, wanting to avoid causing her any harm. Tomo and Miyu were understandably annoyed, muttering about Misumi's sudden tenderness as he managed to capture Bright after uncovering his scheme against the demi-human. After Misumi's subordinates restrained Bright, he entered and taunted, "Did you think you could escape?" As the final exam approached, Misumi's academy students were diligently working to elevate their levels. Misumi mentioned a particularly challenging practical exam for them. He introduced another creature, a blue lizard, into the training grounds. Despite the students' preparation, the monsters swiftly overpowered them. The students quickly regrouped and launched their assault on the monsters. Suddenly, the monsters morphed into even more vicious forms, their attacks on the students growing increasingly brutal. Even in defeat, Misumi commended their efforts and apologized for the harsh test, which could have ended in disaster if anyone had been seriously hurt. The students were shocked to learn that most of their opponents were originally dragons, yet they had been so thoroughly beaten by the supposedly weaker lizards. Misumi corrected their misconceptions, explaining that blue lizards are particularly stronger than dragons. This is due to their reliance on a unique type of mana which dragons can only partially utilize, making the lizards superior. Summer arrives, a time for all beings to mature, and also when the academy closes its doors. Despite his high level, Misumi always sought more, so he approached Lotto to discuss his desire to enhance his mana. Lotto reassured him that his mana was sufficient, but when Misumi insisted on gaining more power, Lotto handed him a rare book on enhancing abilities. Eager for further knowledge, Misumi visited the library where he encountered Eva, who provided him with a unique book on strength enhancement. Misumi discovered that the book contained many original theories on the topic. He decided to return to the dwarf village for summer break, where he met Emma, who shared details about the summer activities planned. The first activity involved battling the Winged Ones, a new class that Misumi had agreed to join. Misumi began strategizing for this battle, but faced a challenge. Whenever he attempted to use his mana externally, he would lose consciousness. Though he enjoyed life in the dwarf village, he truly missed Miu's delicious cooking, devouring the meals with great enthusiasm. It was clear that Miu still possessed her trademark cunning and malice. She intentionally spiced the food in a way that would deter Tomo, allowing her to enjoy Misumi's company alone. Misumi immersed himself in the books he had gathered. At last, he managed to wield his mana externally without losing consciousness, feeling prepared for any confrontation, as the mana acted like a protective shield. With half of summer vacation gone, Misumi continued to study the books he had brought along. One day, he learned that all the groups in the dwarf village were putting on a show and wanted him to attend the auditorium. Misumi agreed and arrived at the venue, discovering that the factions planned a demonstration to collaboratively destroy a massive magic stone. Each class began assisting the others, and Misumi observed their increasing coordination in their attacks. After each class completed their part of the demonstration, the final task was to shatter the stone, but its extreme hardness thwarted their efforts. Miu decided to take matters into her own hands and destroy the stone, but before she could approach it, Adomo appeared wielding a powerful sword and began casting spells. He stepped back and launched himself like an arrow at the stone, obliterating it with a single swing of his mighty sword. However, a large fragment of the stone remained intact, prompting Misumi to handle it himself. He summoned all his mana, took a few steps back, and charged at the stone like a thunderbolt, smashing it into tiny pebbles with one strike. The audience in the theater was left in awe at the sheer power with which Misumi shattered the stone. While Misumi reveled in his strength, some onlookers silently pondered whether his power posed a threat to their existence. One day, as Misumi strolled through the forest, a massive piece of armor was hurled at him, nearly killing him. His astonishment was cut short by a menacing voice from a monster. The voice warned Misumi that he would be spared this time if he promised to leave the forest, but if he insisted on challenging them with his... Misumi began gathering intel about the voice he had heard in the forest. He realized the voice belonged to orcs, who had recently been attacked in the forest. Seeing Misumi's extraordinary strength, they mistakenly believed he was the one who had assaulted them, leading them to threaten him. Armed with this crucial information, Misumi sought to clear up the misunderstanding and approached the orc class, though he initially couldn't find them. In the middle of the forest, he was startled by an enormous bear that charged at him. Misumi activated his external mana and easily blocked the bear's attack. Then, a pack of fierce wolves joined the fray, attacking him. Misumi spoke to them, explaining that he had come only to apologize for the earlier incident. To his surprise, the bear and wolves continued their assault. They explained that they attacked because the force Misumi used to destroy the stone was so immense that they feared he intended to dominate the area and eliminate them. Misumi reassured them that this was not his intention, and after a friendly exchange, the bear and wolves offered to become his allies, once the forest creatures sensed Misumi's peaceful nature, they began to acknowledge him. One day, Misumi spotted an enormous bird that startled him. Tomo prepared to leap at the bird, but Misumi urged her to hold on. The bird flew closer, landing on a tree branch, and began speaking to Misumi, introducing itself as the Boulder Bird, ready to watch the skies for him, and later calling itself the Stone Bird. At that moment, Adomo plotted to take down the half-dragon and question Karn about her inability to return home. She replied that returning wasn't an option right now. Karen mirrored Adomo's inquiry, prompting him to reminisce about a girl named Miranda from his village. When Karen inquired about Miranda, Adomo described her as incredibly brave, capable of defending their village from all attackers. Karen assumed Miranda was Adomo's mentor, but he clarified that she was actually his first love. Surprised, Karen asked why they weren't together. Adomo's voice turned somber as he recounted a day they were sent to explore the forest. During their adventure, Adomo and Miranda stumbled upon a wizard's workshop shrouded in mystery. Upon entering, a massive monster attacked, forcing Adomo to flee. To his astonishment, Miranda stood her ground against the beast, and he never saw her again. Moved by the tale, Karen listened as Adomo vowed to find Miranda and promised to become as strong as she was. A crucial step in his quest to reunite with Miranda involved defeating the half-dragons. Adomo requested Misumi to summon a pack of half-dragons for him to battle, while Misumi would send one to his students. Misumi took Adomo's request seriously, unleashing his power to locate a herd of half-dragons. After dispatching most of them, he led the remaining ones to Adomo and his students. Excitement surged among Misumi's students at the prospect of fighting a dragon-like creature, prompting them to collaborate. Despite the dragon's might, Misumi's students remained confident, taunting, "Come at us, fool. We'll seal your fate." In the end, they triumphed over the dragon-like creature, their joy palpable. Misumi marveled at their progress, not far from where they started. Miranda entered the same sorcerer's workshop. She had arrived there with Adamo, and it shocked us to discover it belonged to Lotto. Determined, Miranda resolved to take revenge on all dragons and finally confront Lotto. The fall season had arrived, heralding the eagerly anticipated Academy Festival. People flocked from all directions to partake in the festivities. Eager to make the most of the occasion, Misumi entered his shop to prepare his unique offerings. Misumi soon learned that a temple priest named Shinai wished to meet him, prompting him to go. After introductions, the priest began discussing Misumi's rare medicinal products. The priest requested some of these products for the temple due to a recent surge of unusual illnesses. Listening to the priest, Misumi wondered what this fool was up to. Is he trying to bribe me? Whatever, I'll sort it out myself. Not wanting to lose the temple's favor, Misumi decided to balance things and told the priest he would attend with his alchemist to discuss details. On the designated day, Misumi arrived at the temple and met the high priest, who inquired about his business and its duration. Though it felt like an interrogation, Misumi answered that he had been in business for 3 years. The high priest then asked which company supported him. When Misumi mentioned Rembrandt's company, the high priest grew irritated, claiming it had anti-temple sentiments. What does that have to do with me? Misumi thought. I'm just a merchant, not interested in your religious nonsense. Misumi attempted to escape the trap by asserting he was merely a merchant, uninterested in religious affairs. The high priest accused Rembrandt's company of being satanic, claiming that Rembrandt's wife and daughter were cursed. While much of what the priest said was true, Misumi sensed manipulation and directly asked what the temple wanted. The priest revealed that the temple sought to do business with Misumi's store. Misumi agreed to consider it. One day, while walking, he felt eyes on him, and he was right. Moments later, a large group of assassins in black uniforms and masks ambushed him. "Oh, you finally showed up? I've been waiting for you idiots." To his shock, the same fighter who had previously attacked Miu was among them. Misumi unleashed his power, swiftly dispatching them all. Feeling agitated after the ambush, Misumi decided to practice archery to calm his nerves. While he was focused on shooting arrows, Tomo entered to share her brilliant plan for weather control. The plan involved opening a fog gate during fall to regulate the temperature on festival day. Misumi overslept and panicked upon realizing he was late for the festival's start, rushing to catch the beginning. Upon reaching his shop, he was thrilled to see a line of customers eager to buy his rare products. Later, Misumi indulged in a delightful meal prepared by Miu. While the festival brought joy to many, sinister plots brewed to take down Misumi and his allies. On the festival's second day, we discovered it was focused on assessing students' conduct, speech, and moral values learned at the academy. Misumi encountered Rembrandt and his wife Lisa, who dazzled in her stunning blue gown, and he sensed the deep affection they shared. Soon after, Misumi was approached by female fighters from the demon army, requesting a conversation. Despite the risks, Misumi chose to engage with them after sitting down with one. He inquired if this was their first meeting or if they had crossed paths before. The fighter confirmed it was their first encounter, introducing herself as Shiritsu from the Lorelei Federation. When Misumi asked about the Laurel Union, she explained it was a coalition of 3 nations united as one. "Even if you claim ignorance of Laurel, I suspect you know her well," Shiritsu remarked to Misumi. Curious, Misumi asked why she thought that. Shiritsu explained it was mainly due to the name of his shop, a term only sages use. Misumi insisted he wasn't a sage. Shiritsu clarified she didn't mean it literally, hinting that the 2 heroes sent were originally sages. Misumi thought to himself, "What a clever woman. She suspects I might be one of those heroes." Yet Misumi stood firm, assuring her he had no knowledge of what she was implying. Realizing Misumi had nothing more to add, Shiritsu excused herself, expressing hope for their next meeting. Before departing, Shiritsu asked Misumi to clarify the meaning behind his store's name. Misumi explained that the name originally referred to a plant known for its numerous medicinal properties. Later, Lily, the princess of Gritonia, learned about the Laurel Union representatives meeting with Misumi and summoned them for details. However, the representatives from the Laurel League assured the princess that the meeting was routine, and Masumi revealed nothing significant. From Lily's exchange with Chiritsu, it became clear that she was quite invested in Misumi's affairs. Despite having her own spies within the Laurel League, Lily attempted to ensnare Chiritsu for more intel. "I know you're trying to set me up, but I assure you it won't succeed," Chiritsu thought to herself. Lily then caught her off guard with a question about gunpowder. Chiritsu managed to respond wisely, providing only basic information. By day's end, Rembrandt expressed immense gratitude to Misumi, noting how his family members had improved significantly after joining the academy. While Misumi conversed with Rembrandt, a student from the High Alma class approached him disrespectfully, threatening Misumi and his students. Misumi shrugged it off, assuring Rembrandt and his wife that he would handle the situation himself. Miyu continued to serve her delectable dishes to Misumi, who was becoming quite addicted to her cooking. As usual, Tomo and Miyu were at odds, leading to yet another argument. Misumi shouted at them to stop fighting. "You two fools, we should all be enjoying the festival." The princess then reached out to Lotto, seeking more information about Misumi. Lotto shared everything he knew, revealing that this wasn't their first collaboration. Misumi informed his students they would engage in a magical duel at the festival's conclusion, with strict rules prohibiting most spells. Misumi then met with Rembrandt, who urged him to hurry to the Merchants Guild to expand his shop. Eager to witness the magical duels among his team, Misumi thanked Rembrandt and promised to head to the Merchants Guild promptly. Shortly after, the announcer declared the commencement of the Rothschild battle, promising an intense showdown. Misumi felt a mix of excitement and concern as he anticipated the battle, pondering if he would ever return to his home world. Though thrilled to see the magical duel, Misumi worried for his students' safety, hoping none would be harmed. Meanwhile, despite their camaraderie, each student aimed to deliver their best performance in the competition. The battles unfolded one after another, and Misumi noted that the students' skill levels were closely matched, each casting spells accurately. We then witnessed a match between Casper and Jin, both evenly matched, but Jin ultimately triumphed thanks to his superior speed. Rembrandt's daughter also secured victory against her opponent in their duel. However, it was evident that many in the audience disapproved of the Rembrandt family, speculating that she had leveraged her family's influence to acquire expensive magical items. Jin advanced to the next round, facing a formidable opponent named Danya, but once again, Jin emerged victorious. On the other hand, Rembrandt's daughter qualified for the Witch category finals and won, earning applause from the audience, who began to sympathize with her. Jin, meanwhile, prepared for the final match against one of the strongest fighters. The battle commenced, both charging at each other like bulls. However, it quickly became one-sided. From the start, Jin dominated, knocking his opponent's sword away twice and finishing with a powerful kick that sent him sprawling. The fight concluded with Jin's victory, met with cheers from the crowd, but we saw the defeated fighter vowing revenge. The judges decided that the winner of the Mage category would face off against the Fighter category champion. In other words, a decisive match awaited to crown the tournament champion. The upcoming duel pits Jin against his son, Rembrandt. The clash ignited when Rembrandt's daughter launched a spell, showcasing her flawless magical skills, leaving Jin in awe. In a stunning turn, Rembrandt's daughter clinched the tournament victory, much to Miss Yumi's joy over her student's remarkable growth. While contemplating the future, Miss Yumi received unsettling news from the Merchants Guild. Through Rembrandt, Miss Yumi discovered the guild leader urgently wanted a meeting, but the next day's visit troubled her. It was the day his entire team would showcase their skills before a massive audience. Though the fighters felt disheartened by Miss Yumi's absence, they rallied together to deliver an impressive performance. The following day, Miss Yumi arrived at the Merchants Guild, only to find the guildmaster's demeanor quite severe. The guildmaster began to grill Miss Yumi about the merchandise available in his shop. After the inquiry, Miss Yumi questioned the reason behind it, and the manager cited troubling reports regarding his products. Miss Yumi insisted that everything in his store was transparent. The manager retorted sharply, expressing disbelief that he possessed all these goods without any visible transport. Finally, Miss Yumi grasped the reason for his confrontation with the Merchants Guild manager. The guild was astonished by the lack of apparent goods transportation. This was due to Miss Yumi using his mana to move goods across worlds. The issue was that revealing this to the Merchants Guild would lead to immediate repercussions. The guildmaster then began to suggest Miss Yumi's collaboration with the temple. Miss Yumi thought to himself, You're all just blackmailers, each pursuing your own agenda at my store's expense. The guildmaster issued an unjust demand. Miss Yumi must first provide all transportation records and then surrender 90% of his profits. Outraged by this unfair decree, Miss Yumi condemned the syndicate and its leader, calling it blatant extortion. Yet the manager stood firm, stating this was the consequence of not being upfront with the syndicate from the start. He warned that failure to comply would result in the closure of Miss Yumi's shop, forcing him back to the sidelines. Miss Yumi returned to Tomo and Miyu, who were fired up against the Merchants Guild, urging him to seek revenge on the manager. However, Miss Yumi urged them to calm down, opting for a peaceful resolution and deciding to pay the guild to maintain good relations, hoping to return home one day. We shift to a place called Insolend, where the Warrior Island and Hobiles, scion from the renowned Lemian family, vows to rectify the noble's mistakes. Back to Miss Yumi, still frustrated that Rembrandt treated him like an ordinary merchant, but he quickly addressed the issue. He reached out to Rona, asking her to keep demons away from Rothsgard, fearing for his students after a supernatural incident. Naturally, Miss Yumi was also concerned about Jin and Abby. Convinced he needed to leave town, he requested a meeting with the rival team's student leader in a nearby room. Initially, she thought he was flirting, but Miss Yumi surprised her by stating he wanted to leave town and needed someone reliable to check on his students. In the arena, discussions buzzed about the students' impressive performances, praising Jin and Miss Ra's battles. Miss Ra was eager to fight, motivated by Talmoy's promise to train with her post-tournament, if she survived, of course. While conversing with friends, a guard interrupted, announcing the competition was about to resume, and they needed to win the remaining matches to secure a final spot. Shiko sat in the stands observing his team, but his attention was drawn to an opposing fighter sporting a peculiar amulet. Shiko warned everyone that this fighter seemed suspicious, using the amulet to amplify his magical strength, explaining his superiority. This Eilungan possessed an inexplicable power, recalling his training days with Hibiki, whom he reluctantly left behind, promising to return after the competitions. He also reminisced about Loria, recalling their childhood games when she wore the same mascot. But soon some bullies appeared, mocking Loria for her town's destruction and the loss of her family. Eilungan quickly intervened, questioning why a princess like Loria found herself in such a wretched place. The bullies taunted Loria for fleeing her city instead of fighting like a true princess, now reduced to working as a waitress. Loria retorted, asserting that people like them had never faced real conflict and had no right to judge her. Eilungan observed the scene from a distance when a student from the academy slipped in, informing him of a new magical drug that could exponentially boost strength. Eilungan agreed to try the drug, hoping it would enhance his power to protect Loria. Unbeknownst to him, the drug came with numerous side effects, and he would soon be exploited. Back at the Academy's competition, Eilungane dominated every opponent until Jin stepped up to challenge him, managing to land a few hits. Eilungan appeared so rattled that Jin asked the referee if he should continue, noting his opponent's fatigue. The referee insisted Eilungan was still fit to fight and urged Jin to keep attacking. Eilungan remained formidable, but with help from a teammate, Jin combined their strength, delivering a blow that sent Eilungan soaring. Only then did Jin and his allies realize Eilungan's greatest vulnerability was his inability to defend while airborne. As Eilungan crashed to the ground, immobilized, the masters decided to commence the victory ceremony, knowing he couldn't continue. Out of nowhere, Eilungan jolted awake, channeling an immense mana that stunned everyone, including Misumi, who finally grasped that Rona had only promised to protect his city. Not this one, as Eilungan surrendered to the demons for that overwhelming power. He thought of Loria, repeatedly apologizing for his inability to harness that power and for being lured into using the drug that transformed him into a beast. Naturally, this change shocked all spectators as they watched the demons seize control of Eilungan's body, rendering him completely helpless. Eilungan's form began to expand, triggering panic even outside the academy, prompting a mass exodus as he morphed into a full-fledged monster. It dawned on the Academy's fighters that they were outmatched, leading them to retreat in haste. Misumi, however, remained in his seat, observing until a teacher approached him, urging him to evacuate quickly since the demons had breached the Academy and were now threatening the city. In that moment, Misumi understood the urgency of acting swiftly and cautiously before the situation spiraled out of control. But before he could take action, he turned to the girls, pressing them to respond to his earlier questions. Do you truly wish to reclaim the kingdom overrun by demons? The girls confirmed their desire, especially Loria, who longed for her kingdom more than ever. That was all Misumi needed to rally his students for the impending battle against the demons. Initially, Misumi asked Shiki if there was a way to liberate Ilungan from the demon's grasp. Shiki replied that it was a daunting task he preferred to avoid, so Misumi requested him to monitor the situation in the city. Misumi also resolved to seek assistance from fighters in other parallel realms. Tomoe's eyes lit up at this, declaring that their current ordeal was merely a test. If they could safeguard the city, it would earn them love and loyalty from those below. It would also eliminate many undesirable merchants. Meanwhile, Rona stood there, torn between mourning Misumi for dragging him into this conflict and celebrating the demon's takeover of a new human territory. Just then, the demon leader approached her, announcing that the ring's construction was nearing completion and they would soon have the chance to conquer another human kingdom. Simultaneously, Misumi was gearing up to execute his plan when Ramadan appeared, equally astonished by the chaos unfolding in the city. He quickly apologized to Misumi, explaining he needed to visit the Merchants Guild to assess their situation post-disaster. Before departing, he inquired about Misumi's encounter with the merchant captain, to which Misumi replied that the captain had outright refused to acknowledge him as a merchant. Thus, Ramadan decided to leave 2 magical guards to ensure Misumi's safety during the turmoil. After Ramadan departed, Misumi noticed the Academy's elite guards in purple coats arriving to confront the formidable beasts. They promptly began casting elemental spells for battle, starting with the Flame Sword, followed by the Ice Spear, then the Dust Feint, and finally the Storm Cross. However, the monster proved resistant to 3 of these spells and absorbed the water magic. These spells were ineffective, instead amplifying the monster's strength, which easily dispatched all the fighters. This infuriated Misumi, who chastised Shiki for being unkind to his students and failing to prepare them for such challenging scenarios. Misumi then instructed Tomoe and Shiki to encourage their students to hold their ground on the battlefield for as long as possible, at least until they gained more experience. Misumi and Tomoe then made their way to the Metavirgin seats, where they encountered some princes who were clueless about how to escape, along with their old friend Lotto. The Academy's headmaster emerged from the crowd, asking Misumi and Tomoe about their strategy. Tomoe explained her plan to relocate everyone to a secure location. However, the principal doubted her capability to transport people, prompting Lotto to volunteer as if he had never met them before, offering himself as a test subject for Tomoe's transportation attempt. Naturally, it succeeded, and Tomoe stepped up to transport all the guests. Yet the king chose to remain, and even urged Misumi to join him in the fight, hoping to bring Ilungan to his senses. The king and Ilungan's father pleaded with Ilungan to reconsider, but he continued his relentless assault on the warriors. What caught Misumi's attention was the emergence of a new monster. The prince attempted to appear courageous, charging at the monster, only to be knocked down by Misumi, who saved him from a catastrophic fall. Realizing that the only spell capable of harming Ilungan was the fire spell, Abby decided to unleash all her power, instructing everyone to retreat as far as possible. She first cast the float spell to soar over Ilungan, who was still reeling from Abby's teammates' earlier attack. Before Abby unleashed a fiery arrow with all her might, she fell to the ground, unaware of the monster's fate or whether she had succeeded in defeating it. Naturally, everyone rushed to her aid after she exhausted all her mana battling Ilungan. Following the battle, Misumi approached Ilungan's father to express his regrets about what had happened to his son after Abby's victory. The man took it all in stride, commending Misumi and his students for their bravery in confronting the monstrous threat. He even extended an offer for Misumi to recruit them as mercenaries. However, they first needed to devise a plan to evacuate everyone in the city, fearing the monster's relentless attacks, which showed no signs of stopping. Misumi then went to check on Abby, who had depleted all her mana casting the spell on the arrow, leaving her utterly drained. Meanwhile, Jin seethed with frustration over his inability to finish off Ilungan and was even angrier about having fought so fiercely in front of his friend. But Misumi, with his usual wisdom, eased Jin's worries, advising him to rest for a bit, since the real battles were just beginning, as the mutant monsters encroached on Rotsgard and nearby cities. Hearing this alarming news sent everyone into a panic, prompting Misumi to realize his students were still fatigued from the fight against Ilungan, so he asked Tomoe to keep an eye on them while he ventured into the city to assess the situation. Misumi's first stop was his shop, now reduced to rubble, not a trace remaining. Yet, Misumi decides to stay optimistic, viewing this as a chance to launch a new business before the shock wears off. Hearing cries for help from the entertainment district, Misumi hurries over, spotting a shattered window. There lies the issue. Upon arrival, he finds a monster cornering several girls working there. One girl, Istiel, urges him to leave immediately, insisting he's just a child. Misumi introduces himself as a teacher from the academy, asking her to evacuate quickly and wait for him downstairs. Once the girls were gone, Misumi unleashed his raw strength, severing the monster's limbs. But the monster shrugged it off, quickly regrowing its arms before Misumi delivered a finishing blow. After the fight, he descended to the street, where Istiel awaited, impressed by his strength and fame as a merchant. He suggested they head to the slums, the only safe haven for now, assuring her that academy teachers were monitoring access. Meanwhile, Tomoe was en route with Shiki to protect their friends, but abruptly told him to continue alone for an urgent matter. Tomoe returned to the academy to find Ilongand, now a grotesque mass of meat, yet still able to speak. He confessed to Tomoe that despite his monstrous form, he had lost the battle and couldn't express his love for Loria. Ilongand also mentioned that hope for humanity remains as long as Hibiki lives, the only one capable of fostering peace. Tomoe dismissed his words, returning solely to finish Ilongand after her young master Misumi's anger. She caught Ilongand off guard with powerful strikes he couldn't evade, ultimately finishing him off before leaving the academy. Back in the city, Misumi convened with other teachers to discuss the latest developments. The first update confirmed around 80 mutated monsters were roaming the city. Additionally, the city was cut off from others as monsters disrupted all communication and destroyed anti-jamming devices. On a brighter note, the Purple Coats and some trainers had formed combat units ready to engage while awaiting military supplies. Lotto interrupted, highlighting the pressing issue of mutants distributing drugs to the populace in an attempt to convert them. In response, some teachers proposed a plan to gather amulets like Ilongans and isolate their bearers. The academy discovered that mutants were experimenting on humans, creating numerous half-mutants. After absorbing this information, Misumi felt overwhelmed, puzzled by the demons and mutants attacking the academy. He passed by a cat named Paul, inquiring about the situation, but Paul reassured him that things were looking up. As Misumi stepped into the street, he encountered some students, urging them to prepare for the impending war. Then he bumped into Istiel, who praised his strength and promised to inform her boss about him for a job. Naturally, that wasn't the best idea for someone of Misumi's caliber, but he didn't want to hurt Istiel's feelings. Misumi arrived at the academy director's office, where he was reprimanded for initiating an evacuation without prior approval. However, Princess Layla and Karisto entered, defending Misumi for his bravery during the fight. Encouraged by the two ladies, the headmaster chose to overlook Misumi's actions. Nonetheless, he assigned Misumi a mission to eliminate mutants in the northeastern part of the city, allowing him to use students. After the king departed, Layla informed him that reinforcements from other cities were mobilizing. Misumi viewed this not as a daunting task, but as a golden opportunity for his trading company to gain publicity. He visited his students' families, only to find them too exhausted to fight. Moreover, supplies from other cities had yet to arrive, and mutant numbers remained high. Realizing this, the students displayed remarkable courage, declaring their readiness for the imminent battle. Yet Misumi remained anxious, fearing that leaving the dorms unguarded might lead to some students turning into demons. Despite his worries, the students reassured him they would do everything possible to protect the academy. Feeling slightly relieved, he instructed Aqua and Iris to look after the students until he returned. Misumi then set off to join the other teachers, encountering monsters on the way to the northeast. But with Misumi's strength and his classmates' support, the monsters posed no challenge, easily dispatched. Finally, they reached the guild headquarters, where Rambadent was eager to check on his daughter first. Rambadent asked about the state of Misumi's shop, which he confirmed was utterly destroyed, but he had saved the goods and staff. Misumi also inquired about the guild's damage, having noticed signs of looting on his way. Rambadent admitted he couldn't assess the full extent of the damage due to a lack of protection. Patrick interrupted, stating these matters were confidential and not for a failed merchant like Misumi. Ramadan rebuked him, and Misumi explained the situation, claiming responsibility for eliminating the remaining 9 mutants. To reassure Ramadan, he mentioned he had already taken out at least 15 mutants on his way to the syndicate. Ramadan's attitude shifted, promising that the syndicate would back him wholeheartedly. After Misumi departed from the syndicate to evaluate the chaos in the city streets, Ramadan engaged in a lengthy discussion with Patrick, astonished by Misumi's actions. How could such a young, seemingly unsuccessful merchant take down so many mutants and even choose to wage war against them? That's when Patrick revealed that Misumi was more than just a failed trader. He had another business strategy in mind. He aimed for Ramadan to capitalize on the war, though Ramadan hesitated, still holding on to his conscience. Unlike the loser Patrick. Eventually, Patrick persuaded him that a true trader finds ways to profit, no matter the circumstances. Meanwhile, Misumi awaited Tomoe, who was out gathering amulets from the city. She discovered Mio in high spirits, competing with Shiki to see who could slay the most monsters. In the meantime, Misumi chose to explore the artisan district, aware of its significant mutant presence. In that area, Master Mundo was teaching a monster a lesson, even transforming them into trees as part of the city's restoration. Even after the monster revived, Mundo succeeded in eliminating it for good this time. The academy was in turmoil. The headmaster feared the war would escalate, urging all students, even novices, to join the fight. Naturally, Aqua and Ares refused, erecting a barrier around the academy to prevent anyone from leaving. Yet, Misumi found a way through the barrier and inquired about the situation. Aqua informed him that mutant activity was concentrated in the affluent part of the city. Misumi then requested Tomoe to re-establish telepathy between the city and its surroundings, which she managed to do. Once telepathy was restored, the king imposed a curfew, fearing that it would expose them to demon assaults. Through telepathy, the king learned that demons were heading toward the royal capital, planning a concentrated strike to annihilate the kingdom, using Rothschild as a distraction. Everyone needed to return home to rally forces for the war, and only Misumi could facilitate their transport. As soon as he arrived, the king made a request. The king explained that demons had launched simultaneous assaults on both the royal capital and Ronus, the imperial capital. The demons had the ability to disguise themselves as humans, moving their forces undetected. This strategic development alarmed everyone. The demons' remarkable evolution was no trivial matter. The king and Princess Layla needed to return swiftly to salvage what they could. However, Mitomi delivered grim news. The magical sword meant for transportation had been severely drained during the deceptive conflict in the city, rendering it useless. The king was displeased, telling Misumi he would reward him generously if he could transport them, but punishment awaited if he declined. Misumi cast a spell to transport Princess Layla and the king, who decided to leave Joshua behind to assist the city's defenders. Once the king departed, Misumi and Tomoe mocked him for falling for their ruse, as the sword was merely a fake, intended to deceive him for the reward. Misumi then strolled with his friend, who remarked that this war was a grand deception. Even the attack on Runas might be a facade, as he suspected the demons aimed to obliterate the kingdom of Lemia and eliminate its hero. This hero possessed extraordinary mania, allowing him to turn foes into puppets that obeyed his every command. However, the kingdom of Lemia harnessed a unique mana that birthed heroes with unparalleled determination and will. Misumi wished to assist these heroes despite lacking a personal connection, but he felt stuck after tricking the king into believing the transformation sword was real. While Misumi pondered aloud with his friend Shiki, he was summoned once more by Supreme Master Rona. Upon arrival, Rona urged him to join the war and aid the hero of Lemia. Naturally, Misumi couldn't suppress his childish tendencies, claiming he lacked the motivation to help the heroes and might even side. Rona recognized that Misumi was ready to fight, but she wanted something in return. When she inquired about his desires, Misumi struggled to provide an answer, prompting Rona to scold him. At that moment, Shiki interjected, suggesting that Rona grant Misumi the ability to speak the common language. She made it clear that he must fight alongside the hero of Lemia and seize Stella's castle. Failure would result in her mercilessly ending his life. On their journey to Lemia, Misumi contacted Neo, instructing her and Tomoe to take control of Kalen with the help of volunteers and soldiers. Neo and Tomoe were ecstatic to learn that Misumi was relying entirely on them for his missions. They quickly returned to the academy, rallying the army and informing the Highland Orcs and Miss Lizards that Misumi had personally endorsed these soldiers for their combat experience. After an inspiring speech from Tomoe, the army prepared to fight in Misumi's name, led by Mio and Tomoe. The army advanced, with Mio assessing the number of demons in Kalen and deciding to enter the fortress for a better vantage point. Tomoe positioned herself at the Silver Gate, instructing the remaining troops to ready themselves for battle. Once the two girls vanished, the Orc and Lizardmen commanders commanded their forces to charge forward with all their strength, not underestimating the demon numbers. The initial assault on Kalen commenced, during which Misumi's army displayed unmatched bravery and strength, successfully breaching the fortress. Simultaneously, Mio infiltrated the most perilous area in Kalen, reaching the lift chamber where a massive dragon served the Demon King. Yet Mio stood fearless, declaring she would defeat him and present him as a gift to her master, Misumi. Meanwhile, Misumi was still en route with Shiki to Lemia, eagerly anticipating a reunion with the heroes. Mio's situation was dire. She faced Lift, a massive dragon who not only overpowered her, but also analyzed her every move. Yet he had a crucial question. Why did Mio keep using the same attack repeatedly? Mio admitted, despite knowing it would fail, that she was relying on a technique from her master's memories, which she had stuck to. The battle resumed, with Mio attempting to breach Lift's armor, only to be countered and struck again, Lift boasting he could do this endlessly without tiring. What Lift overlooked was Tomoe, guarding the gate, who understood that if Mio mastered Lift's reversal, victory would be hers. Meanwhile, Tomoe, envious of Mio's newfound rival, was busy severing supply lines to Kalen and digging a trench around the area. Back in the imperial capital, Rona anxiously awaited news about the advancing demon forces. Sophia arrived, impressed by Rona's courage to come alone, and inquired about the latest updates. Rona revealed that Tomoe, the Empire's hero, had a peculiar weakness. He performed better at night, as his healing abilities only activated under the moonlight. However, this information was trivial since the First Master's goal was to eliminate Lemia's champion. Rona's concern grew when she learned that Princess Layla had returned to her forces after being in Rothsgard. Following their brief meeting, Sophia set out to confront Tomoki, who was stunned to realize he faced the Dragon Slayer herself. When Tomoki attempted to use his eye magic, he found himself unable to control Sophia, who dismissed his weak spells. Reluctantly, Tomoki resorted to his spear, hoping to defeat her after she promised to become his queen if he succeeded. Sophia confidently lunged at Tomoki, who countered with his mud trick, ensnaring her in a muddy trap. He instructed his aides, Jin and Mura, to remain vigilant, aware that Sophia was full of surprises. Tomoki unleashed his full magical power, combining multiple elements before striking Sophia directly. The impact was so powerful that it was visible from a considerable distance. Tomoki taunted Sophia, claiming he wanted her for himself, but now she would never see another day. Before he could finish his mockery, he was taken aback to see Sophia alive and unharmed. Sophia remarked on his strong magic, but pointed out the lack of strategy behind it. She launched a fierce assault on Tomoki and his aides, sending them crashing to the ground. With a taunt, she hurled Tomoki into the air, then stabbed him again in front of his stunned friends. Despite the beating, Tomoki's healing mana was robust enough for him to rise again, asking Sophia to send his friends away before revealing his true strength. Sophia complied, waiting for Tomoki to activate the teacher's protective power, but he insisted that wasn't his true ability. His real power was a terrifying fire beyond anyone's imagination. Tomoki unleashed his superpower, causing an explosion that shook the ground and formed a massive crater. Unfortunately for him, Sophia emerged unscathed, ready to face him once more. Sophia then reached out to Rona, informing her of Tomoki's actions. Meanwhile, at Stella's castle, the absence of their hero Islamgan was deeply felt, leaving them vulnerable. Hibiki urged an immediate retreat, knowing it was a losing battle despite some commanders opposing the decision. Hibiki insisted on withdrawing all citizens from the demon's path and starting the mandatory retreat. Before anyone could move, Iowa, the demon commander, appeared, vowing to eliminate Hibiki mercilessly. Hibiki braced herself for the worst, but the leaders warned her it wouldn't be a fair fight and advised her to flee. Iowa made his intentions clear, offering Hibiki a choice: flee and let the demons consume her people, or fight regardless of the outcome. Hibiki chose to stand her ground, wielding her wind-infused sword with the support of the other commanders. With all her strength, Hibiki struck, but Iowa effortlessly blocked her blow with gloves enhanced by the 4 elements, countering with a decisive punch. At that moment, the superhero Misumi, disguised to conceal his identity, appeared and intercepted the blow just in time. After blocking the attack, everyone, including Iowa, was stunned, failing to recognize Misumi, not even Hibiki, who had once been his girlfriend. Hibiki was taken aback that her savior was unrecognizable and questioned whether he was an ally or had a vendetta against Iowa. Hearing her voice surprised Misumi, as he couldn't fathom why she was in this world. Before he could think further, Iowa interrupted, telling him to leave, as he had no desire to fight him. Naturally, Misumi ignored the warning, and Iowa launched his first attack, delivering powerful strikes that Misumi managed to catch. Before Iowa could land a surprise hit, Misumi soared into the air, evading his reach. Impressed by this tactic, Iowa decided to continue battling Misumi, unaware of his true identity. Hibiki attempted to assist Misumi, but Shiki, also in disguise, intervened, advising her to leave her teacher alone, as any help would hinder him. While Shiki recounted his adventures, 2 more demons arrived to finish off Shiki, Hibiki, and the other leaders, clearing the way for their commander to deal with Misumi. However, Shiki stood firm, becoming an unyielding barrier against the demons' attempts to eliminate them, igniting a sub-battle in Stella's castle. Contrary to expectations, Shiki proved formidable despite his comical appearance and demeanor, swiftly dispatching the 2 demons. Simultaneously, the main conflict ignited, and Misumi began to test his new suit, experimenting with its weapons. The first he tried were explosive spheres, but Iowa dodged them effortlessly. Using a grappling hook, Misumi seized Iowa's head and delivered a crushing blow with his fist. Soaring through the air, Misumi landed a precise kick to Iowa's face, causing him to stagger. Misumi suggested it was the perfect moment to retreat, but Iowa roared, rallying the other demons to follow his command. Naturally, Misumi inquired about Iowa's technique, to which Iowa replied he learned it from Navel, the hero's girlfriend. Iowa threatened Misumi, claiming his men would mercilessly eliminate all humans. Iowa harnessed Navel's power, consuming his soul for unmatched superhuman strength. Fully transformed, he informed Misumi he was ready to resume the battle, but first erected a barrier around Hibiki and the leaders to prevent them from aiding the city's inhabitants. Hibiki urged Shiki to act quickly, but Shiki wisely advised her that she must destroy the barrier herself first, or she wouldn't be worthy to lead the war against the demons. Upon hearing this, Hibiki attempted to shatter the magical barrier but collapsed from exhaustion just as she was about to surrender. She recalled the moment she was elevated to hero status. In that moment, she chose her superpower to draw strength from the emotions of those around her. Awakening from those memories, Hibiki absorbed the surrounding emotions, fear, anticipation, and hope. With all her energy, she unleashed a final strike against the barrier, obliterating it before collapsing, nearly drained. Yet she quickly rose to save her city, urging Shiki to join her in protecting it from destruction. Misami readied himself to continue his battle with Iowa, who was now intent on defeating him after tapping into Navel's power. Misami realized his only chance of victory lay in breaking that naval spell. Searching for the rose emblem, Misami spotted it on Iowa's shoulder and launched a swift, powerful attack, shattering the talisman. Iowa was stunned by the loss of the power he relied on for the remainder of the fight, and Misami quipped whether Iowa planned to keep fighting or quit as usual. Before Misami could finish his jab, Sophia arrived to join the fray. Upon her arrival, she struck with her spear, knocking off half of Misami's face cover, declaring she knew Iowa couldn't finish him, so she took it upon herself. The encounter between Sophia and Misami felt oddly surreal. Misami felt flattered she remembered him, but questioned why she was still alive, believing the great magician had disposed of her. In a slip of the tongue, Sophia expressed surprise that Misami still hadn't realized he was the Grand Wizard. Misami asked Sophia why she was confronting him, as he wasn't even the kingdom's champion. She replied he was a significant obstacle she needed to eliminate. Just before this highly anticipated clash began, Rona arrived, astonished to see Misami in the fight. Misami attempted to clarify his stance, but Sophia was exasperated that he still followed the Grandmaster's orders. Rona proposed a new deal, asking Misami to leave the city in exchange for her promise to keep humans away from the castle. Misami declined, stating he would fight until the end, even if it meant facing Sophia and Iowa. Before Rona could express her astonishment at Misami's boldness, Iowa cautioned her that it wasn't mere pride, but experience driving him. Misami's strength surpassed anything Iowa had ever witnessed, even breaking the naval spell. Upon hearing about the spell, Rona chastised Iowa for missing the chance to utilize its power, but Iowa warned her against provoking Misami. Sophia launched an attack on Misami, this time employing her stealth abilities to conceal her position. However, Misami had learned from their previous encounter and fortified himself with magic, prompting Sophia to reappear and strike again, wielding dark magic and a sharp blade. This time, Misami's armor easily absorbed the blow. Sophia couldn't believe her eyes as Misami transformed his mana into physical armor that effortlessly withstood her dragon power attacks. Now it was Misami's turn to strike, and he delivered a powerful punch at Sophia, who managed to evade it. Sophia unleashed the powers of multiple dragons in succession, but none could penetrate Misami's impenetrable armor. Only then did Sophia realize that this armor was not just defensively strong, but offensively powerful as well. As Misami fired numerous projectiles at her, she skillfully dodged them, while Iowa attempted to join the battle. Misami warned him that any attempt to attack would result in elimination. Sophia then revealed she had harnessed the powers of 4 dragons, each stronger than the last, and it was the perfect moment to unleash that power. Transforming into a monstrous beast with claws, Sophia launched a surprise assault on Misami's armor, managing to weaken a significant portion and deplete some of his mana, a notable victory for her. Encouraged, Iowa decided to execute a swift attack from behind Misami, who easily anticipated the move, seizing Iowa by the neck and lifting him high before warning him that any further involvement would lead to his elimination. With a powerful punch, he knocked Iowa out, teaching him a harsh lesson. Sophia attempted to exploit Misami's distraction, aiming to weaken his armor once more. Yet, Misami had another trick up his sleeve, quickly repairing his armor. He seized Sophia by the head and unleashed a torrent of fire, sending her crashing to the ground, screaming and unable to rise. Outside Stella's castle, Hibiki continued to fight alongside Shiki and the other commanders, making significant progress. Suddenly, a massive dragon appeared in the city. Naturally, the leaders assumed it was just an ordinary dragon, easily dealt with. However, only Shiki recognized it as the Great Dragon Lancer, who had recently allied with the demon forces for this battle. Meanwhile, within the castle, Misami maintained complete control of the fight until Rona realized he intended to kill Sophia, prompting her to tell him to abandon the battle, promising no further missions. Sophia refused to accept her defeat and chose to strike once more. This time, however, she was utterly drained and began reminiscing about the true champion of the kingdom she had encountered prior to this battle. In that moment, Misami understood that the kingdom hero had ensnared her, just as he typically does with his other victims. After Sophia launched a final attack, Misami effortlessly countered and sent her crashing to the ground, warning her that this was likely her last chance before elimination. Meanwhile, Shiki was locked in a fierce duel with Lancer, who then shifted into his human form to continue the fight. At this point, Shiki realized he needed to step up his game in what would be his final confrontation. Naturally, Shiki panicked upon seeing this fighter, who wouldn't hesitate to put Misami in a tough spot, prompting him to try and halt the onslaught of swords aimed at him. With great effort, Shiki managed to repel the barrage. Just then, Hibiki appeared, urging Shiki to clear the clouds so they could assist him against Lancer. Shiki reassured her that he wouldn't remove the clouds, wanting to shield them from the battle, and vowed to do everything possible to defeat Lancer. Lancer interrupted, declaring their discussion pointless as he would soon unleash his true power to swiftly eliminate them. In that moment, Lancer revealed his magical swords and began gearing up for the fight. After unleashing a powerful strike, Lancer was taken aback when Shiki blocked all his attacks, shattering his swords effortlessly. Shiki then informed him that with Lotto's assistance, the Dragon Lord, he had conducted thorough research on him. Drawing his magic sword dubbed the Dragon Slayer, Shiki prepared to finish Lancer off. Lancer mocked Shiki for attempting to battle one of the mightiest dragons with merely a magic sword, especially one that wasn't even sharpened. However, once the fight commenced, Lancer realized this sword was far more formidable than he had anticipated. Shiki's sword obliterated all of Lancer's weapons, striking his hand with such force that he fell to the ground. Stubborn as ever, Lancer summoned all his master's swords and launched them at Shiki, who effortlessly blocked the assault. Shiki skillfully managed the battle until Lancer eliminated one of Hibiki's allies to join his sword and continue the fight. In that instant, Shiki unleashed all his energy in an attack, successfully finishing Lancer off. However, his disguise was shattered, leaving everyone astonished to discover Shiki was just an ordinary human, his strength stemming from rigorous training. Before resting after the grueling battle, Shiki healed the fighter Lancer had slain and revived him, only to be told he owed his life to Shiki and would repay the favor someday. Back in Misami's battle against Sophia, she suddenly burst into loud laughter, piquing Misami's curiosity, prompting him to ask why she found it amusing. She revealed that she had wagered with Lancer that if he perished before her, she would inherit his life and power, and once Shiki defeated him, she would claim the power of a dragon of Lancer's caliber along with her own. Misami found himself in a bizarre realm known as the Prison of Swords, filled with blades that represented Sophia's life and power. Misami drew his bow and immediately began shattering those swords, infuriating Sophia, who rushed to stop him but failed. He then aimed all his arrows at Sophia, nearly finishing her off, bidding her farewell before releasing his final arrow. Suddenly, Sophia brandished a Japanese magic sword, destroying the arrow and declaring she was willing to risk everything to save her own life. Realizing the might of her Japanese sword, Sophia attacked Misami, managing to shatter the armor that had shielded him from previous strikes. Misami understood he needed a new strategy or Sophia would defeat him, so he shot an arrow that obstructed her view, causing her to rush to where he had been. In a sudden move, Misami dove beneath Sophia and unleashed 2 arrows with full force, completely taking her down before she could defend herself. After defeating Sophia, Misami felt immense joy at liberating the castle, leaving him with nothing but to fulfill his agreement with Rona. So he stood, drew his bow, and fired a super arrow that struck his foes without even seeing them, thus completing Rona's request. He let himself fall as usual after successfully completing the task, having grown accustomed to the routine. Upon returning to the castle, Shiki awaited him, and Misami informed him of his successful mission and his acquaintance with Hibiki, the kingdom's heroine, indicating they needed to head back to their city. Misami reassured the Lemia kingdom that their heroine was indeed Hibiki. After the Lemia battle, Misami had no reason to linger, so he returned to his city, where he was greeted by the entire army after they too achieved a remarkable victory over the demons and mutants. The commanders of the orcs and lizardmen reported that they emerged from the conflict with minimal losses or fatalities. Mio then recounted her battle against Lift, who swung his spear so vigorously that Mio began to consume it, boosting her strength to unprecedented levels, ultimately finishing her meal with Lift himself after pouncing on him. Tomoe inquired about the situation in Lemia, and Misami replied that he had secured a decisive victory with Shiki's assistance. Misami concluded the meeting, stating he needed to rest. However, the Academy's headmaster called for help as some monsters were still causing chaos in the city. Upon hearing the news, Shiki and Mundo rushed to confront the monsters, which posed no challenge for them, and began eliminating them one by one. After all the fighting, Misami had to deal with Tomoe's foul mood as she felt her pride was wounded for not participating in any fierce combat. Yet, Misami won her over by declaring he preferred her over 1,000 dragon soldiers, causing her to blush and forget everything that had transpired. Naturally, this wasn't the end of the battles, as the conflict left significant damage, particularly to the Merchants Guild and the Academy. Thus, Misami personally oversaw the city's reconstruction, ensuring no one neglected their duties. He also announced that classes at the Academy would be suspended for a while until the city recuperated. Misami was bombarded with job offers. Initially, he declined the chance to become a permanent teacher at the Academy, as he had no intention of making a living that way. Later, Misami encountered Ice Steel, who had promised to inform her boss about him. To everyone's surprise, her employer turned out to be Rambident, a merchant captain also running a nightclub. Naturally, Rambident felt awkward upon seeing Misami and offered him any position he desired. Misami, however, declined. He pointed out that Rambident profited the most from the conflicts. His business would thrive during the city's rebuilding, and he'd earn a fortune from it. For the first time, Rambident confessed to Misami that he might not be the best merchant. Yet he was clever and perceptive. Misami brushed off the praise and returned home. We shifted back to Sophia, who was drained and nearly lifeless after her defeat by Misami. Suddenly, a peculiar noise caught her attention, prompting her to investigate the new threat. To her astonishment, the imposing figure was Lotto himself, the mightiest dragon alive. Sophia confronted him, declaring she would easily defeat him. But Lotto revealed the harsh reality. It was his own creation. Long ago, Lotto combined his blood with that of humans, resulting in two dragon-like beings, Sophia and Lancer. Sophia is a direct result of Lotto's actions and stands no chance against him. When she attempted to strike Lotto, he stripped her of all her strength, leaving her on the ground, lamenting the end of her journey. Before she could react further, Lotto ended her existence for good. We return to Rona and Iowa, still resentful after the battle concluded with the demon forces defeated, yet without capturing a castle. Rona, however, had plans in mind, instructing Iowa to keep training his demon troops for the next assault. She also decided it was time for Misami, the self-styled Grand Magician, to meet the Grandmaster. At that moment, Misami shared a celebration with his city, proclaiming that even if trouble arose again, they would endure. Instantly, loud festivities erupted while Misami chose to set aside his worries for now. Tomoe felt indescribable joy as the storms that plagued the kingdoms finally calmed, sharing her relief with Shiki, who felt the same. Seizing the moment, Mio asked Misami if he recalled his promise to do anything for her if she fought honorably. Mio's request seemed odd at first, but she clarified that she wanted him to teach her how to make fried rice. To keep Misami's students motivated, he praised them, expressing gratitude for their strong contributions during the wars and for safeguarding his shop. Ultimately, he told them that without their support, he wouldn't have achieved such remarkable outcomes. This brought immense joy to everyone present.